Chapter 971, A Bit of Excitement Thinking About It. Chapter 971, A Bit of Excitement Thinking About It. Translator. Atlas Studios. Editor. Atlas Studios. The strange phenomenon in the river of time only occurred for a very short moment, but it was deeply etched into Fang Yuan's mind and left a lasting memory. It was at the crucial moment between life and death, it was impossible to not have a clear memory of it. Now, as he recalled that moment, Fang Yuan was filled with doubts. The ghost face and the red lotus, what do they mean? Why did I not come across this situation when I used spring-autumn cicada before? Does it occur only when spring-autumn cicada's activation fails? Or? Shaking his head, Fang Yuan stopped thinking about this mysterious subject. He jumped out of the poisonous blood and flew out of the turtle shell. The injuries on me are heavy, and the soul success Dao mark is now destroyed because of the Gu refinement failure. It is truly a pity. Fang Yuan examined himself and soon noticed the aftereffects of this Gu refinement failure. His body was filled with cracks, almost on the verge of falling apart. Such injuries would require months of recuperation before they could be mended. Gu refinement in itself was a dangerous task, not unlike a heated battle. Let alone when refining immortal Gu. This time, Fang Yuan had failed in Gu refinement because of his rebirth. Suffering serious injuries was to be expected. What made Fang Yuan feel even more regret was that the success Dao mark, which he had obtained after painstaking efforts in the refinement path convention and a difficult journey to reach the top ranks, was destroyed. This gave Fang Yuan some insight. Previously, the reason I failed in refining Star Thought Immortal Gu was not because there was a problem in my method, but the subtle aspect of mutual fusion of the Dao marks of each immortal material, which is not something one can control. This is one of the crucial reasons for the low success rate in refining immortal Gu. The greatest use of success Dao marks is to influence this aspect, to let the Dao marks of the immortal materials fuse together and reach the standard for the Gu refinement. Thus, when I began refining immortal Gu, the success Dao mark was consumed, turning into a special type of immortal material that assisted in refinement. Last time, there was no mishap and I was able to refine change form immortal Gu. The aid of the success Dao mark was immeasurable. But this time, because of my rebirth, this highly likely refinement was messed up. Thinking of this, Fang Yuan felt some irony. It was not that with the success Dao mark, the Gu refinement would succeed no matter how it was done. If the Gu master was purposely trying to fail, intentionally using wrong refinement methods, then it would be certain failure. Success Dao marks were not all powerful. Earlier, why did Fang Yuan intentionally choose star form blessed land to refine the immortal Gu? It was because he was afraid of being disturbed by outside forces, which could cause the Gu refinement to fail. Once the refinement failed, the immortal materials would be lost. Injuries were a small matter, the main thing was that the success Dao mark would also be destroyed. Fang Yuan was reborn, and it just so happened to be during the process of refining change form immortal Gu. This doomed him to failure. Nothing could be done about it now. Last time, change form immortal Gu had been refined successfully, but now it had failed. I have been reborn, and although I have the advantage of future knowledge, accurately speaking, it doesn't mean a path to success. But this rebirth gave me huge advantages. Losing a success Dao mark is inconsequential. Fang Yuan soon sorted out his mood, and stabilized his mindset. Fixed immortal travel. Fang Yuan activated the immortal Gu and returned to Hu immortal blessed land. In the past, he was anxious, but now he knew that there would still be a while before Central Continent made a breakthrough with the matter of 88 True Yang building. He could be more at ease. Although he had his previous life's experience, Fang Yuan had always been the one to consider everything before taking action. An impetuous person would absolutely be unable to reach his current stage. How would he use the countless disorderly clues and his current resources to obtain the maximum benefits? This was the main question Fang Yuan needed to consider. An immortal zombie had slower thought processes. Fang Yuan stepped in the light of wisdom to ponder. Compared to his previous life, his wisdom path attainment had already reached Grandmaster level. He had even thought of a small Gu formation that could let him use the light of wisdom more efficiently and save a large amount of time. In just half a day, Fang Yuan finished pondering over the question. An immortal zombie did not need to eat or drink, although he was injured. Fang Yuan had to make use of every minute and second. Fixed immortal travel. He immediately activated this immortal Gu to secretly return to southern border. Using his methods, he removed most of the aura of the immortal Gu, then he quietly approached Tian Mountain. Fang Yuan was familiar with the surrounding 10,000 li of Tian Mountain. In his previous life, an unprecedented gambling contest had been held on Tian Mountain. Fang Yuan had also participated in it. As time passed, the range of the forbidden zone for immortals had continued to expand, and Fang Yuan had to constantly move farther away, along with the southern border Gu immortals. Thus, he was very familiar with the scenery near Tian Mountain. Tian Mountain. At this moment it was still only a nameless mountain peak. Before Fang Yuan's arrival, there had just been rain over this mountain. The future Tian Mountain was tall and beautiful, with lush trees and deep valleys. A rainbow appeared above and life seemed to brimming with vitality. Fang Yuan gazed from afar, moving in carefully and full of expectations. If Fang Yuan was asked what was it that enticed him the most after rebirth, it was no doubt Tian Mountain, under which was buried the immortal Gu House graceful chaotic dual stage, and the suppressed rank 8 great strength true martial immortal zombie. The significance of the latter to Fang Yuan did not need to be said. Although last time, this rank 8 great strength true martial immortal zombie had actually leaped out, getting rid of graceful chaotic dual stages suppression. As long as I can successfully refine the immortal Gu House and become its new owner, I can continue to suppress him. If I can obtain graceful chaotic dual stage. Fang Yuan licked his lips as he thought of this. An immortal Gu House was no small matter. Immortal Gu Houses and ancient battle formations, they were the highest achievements of formation path. Among them, ancient battle formations were gradually eliminated over the course of time, and immortal Gu Houses had become mainstream. Whether it be southern border, northern plains, eastern sea, western desert or central continent, all powerful super forces had at least one immortal Gu House as their trump card. Like He tribe, Dark Prison was their symbol as well as a powerful trump card. In Fang Yuan's previous life, after Dark Prison had been lost, to seize it back, even the 4 supreme elders of He tribe had risked going out and chasing He Cheng. Dark Prison was only a rank 6 immortal Gu House and He tribe had been so anxious to take it back. The significance of immortal Gu Houses could be seen from this. And graceful chaotic dual stage, which was buried deep under Tian Mountain, was not only of higher rank than Dark Prison. A mysterious Gu immortal had used its power to forcibly challenge someone of a higher rank and succeeded in suppressing a rank 8 expert, one who furthermore possessed the great strength true martial physique. The value of graceful chaotic dual stage was clearly many times higher than Dark Prison. Thinking back to my previous life, the profound ice house used by Shark Demon and Su by Man was only an incomplete immortal Gu House, but it could repeatedly break through the hindrance of the battlefield killer moves and escape. If I can obtain this graceful chaotic dual stage, even if I can't reach the level of moving unhindered in the world, in the future, when the truth is exposed and I am hunted down by Central Continent, Northern Plains and others, I can protect myself and intimidate other immortals. An immortal Gu House was a fortress for battle. It did not have any shortcomings and covered all aspects of attack, defense, movement, healing and even assistance in cultivation. It was structurally stable, and was easy to control. A rank 7 immortal Gu House could be controlled by a rank 6 Gu immortal as well. However, immortal Gu Houses had 2 major flaws, one was feeding and the second was immortal essence. An immortal Gu House was constructed from many immortal Gu and vast numbers of mortal Gu. Feeding these Gu worms was naturally extremely troublesome and a huge burden. But Fang Yuan knew that graceful chaotic dual stage seemed to involve food path in its construction, and the feeding problem could be disregarded. Next was the immortal essence. To activate an immortal Gu House, the amount of immortal essence consumed would be a gigantic number. Just with Fang Yuan's capability, he would not be able to bear it. In his previous life, when Shark Demon had no choice but to activate Profound Ice House, all the immortal zombies had to share the burden of immortal essence consumption, and the amount of consumption had greatly distressed everyone. The price to activate an immortal goo house was huge. Because the amount of immortal essence consumed was extremely high. Fang Yuan was now in a poor state. He had staked it all and used up all his assets to barely be able to gather one set of immortal materials for refining change-form immortal goo. And now, he had failed the refinement, losing most of the immortal materials. He had little money in possession. Even though he had many rich income sources like the Daoist Gu trade, earning 1,000 immortal essence stones every month, half of a year of accumulating this income would not be enough to activate the immortal goo house for even 30 seconds. But none of these mattered. Fang Yuan had very little green grape immortal essence, but he had large amounts of Giant Sun's immortal essence. This could be traced back to Imperial Court Blessed Land. Giant Sun Immortal Venerable was rank 9, the immortal essence he had left behind was the yellow apricot immortal essence that only rank 9 venerables could form. The quality of this immortal essence was countless times greater than green grape immortal essence. The difference between the two was like the gap between heaven and earth. Giant Sun's immortal essence could not be used by Fang Yuan himself, but the immortal goo house could absorb it. Immortal goo houses could absorb immortal essence of others, otherwise Shark Demon and the other immortal zombies would not be able to combine their powers to activate Profound Ice House. This was the fundamental characteristic of immortal goo house, integrating the power of a group of immortals into one. Fang Yuan had thought of this in his previous life. As far as he was concerned, Giant Sun's immortal essence was like water with a source or a tree without roots. The more it was used, the more it would be consumed, and it could not be replenished. Thus, the even more economical method was to gather many goo immortals to serve as a source of labor in activating the immortal goo house. Unfortunately, the southern border goo immortals had died too quickly. Or one could say Fang Yuan was not able to make it in time. Graceful Chaotic Duel stage had yet to be refined by anyone when the great strength true martial immortal zombie had broken out. This was a huge pity. If I have Graceful Chaotic Duel stage, I could resist even that beam of life that was about to kill me. Fang Yuan had confidence. Graceful Chaotic Duel stage naturally was not Heaven Overseeing Tower's match, but Heaven Overseeing Tower's condition was not optimum. That light pillars might have been reduced after being whittled down by the 10 extreme immortal zombie lifeless formation. With Graceful Chaotic Duel stage, although he could not say, with a house in hand, the world is mine, it was enough to say, with a house in hand, advancing or retreating is up to me. With a house in hand, the world is mine. The rank 888 True Yang building could be said to be one such example. It was specialized in plundering goo worms, even immortal goo. The rank 8 Refinement Cauldron was another one. Compared to the immortal goo house Graceful Chaotic Duel stage, Self-Strength Immortal Goo, All-Out Effort Immortal Goo, Star Thought Immortal Goo, all of them seemed unimportant. As long as he had the immortal goo house, with Giant Sun's immortal essence, Fang Yuan could use his rank 6 bottom tier cultivation level and immortal zombie body to forcibly fight rank 8s, directly becoming one of the strongest experts. Just thinking about it gives me a bit of excitement. Fang Yuan carefully inspected his surroundings, and after confirming there was no one around, he immediately drilled into the ground, entering deep into the earth. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 972, Rebirth Plans. Chapter 972, Rebirth Plans. Translator. Atlas Studios. Editor. Atlas Studios. What's going on? Where is Graceful Chaotic Duel stage? Fang Yuan was filled with doubts and disappointment. After he was reborn, he had almost immediately hurried to Tian Mountain, thinking of getting this immortal goo house. But when he searched under the ground, he discovered that Graceful Chaotic Duel stage was simply not present. Even that rank 8 great strength true martial immortal zombie could not be found. Could it be that there were other reasons behind the appearance of graceful chaotic dual stage? I came early, so the opportunity was not available. Fang Yuan frowned as he pondered. He had guessed correctly. Previously, the reason graceful chaotic dual stage appeared was due to Bai Ningbing. He had activated a mysterious immortal Gu, and this immortal Gu had been given to him by old man Xianxia. Fang Yuan naturally did not know this detail. He also did not have this immortal Gu, so he could not find any trace of graceful chaotic dual stage. If graceful chaotic dual stage was simply buried under the ground, then it would probably have already been discovered by others. How would it remain up until now? Without any other choice, Fang Yuan could only leave quietly. He was unable to obtain graceful chaotic dual stage. As such, Fang Yuan had to modify his plans and put it aside for the moment, carrying out his other ideas first. After moving a long distance from Yitian Mountain, Fang Yuan carefully activated Immortal Gu Fixed Immortal Travel. The Immortal Gu's aura leaked, jade green radiance flashed. The next moment, Fang Yuan disappeared from southern border, and appeared in that giant formation in northern plains Earth Trench. This giant formation was a space path formation. The space inside it was extremely large. In his previous life, Fang Yuan had used fixed immortal travel to enter here. In this life, he had once again used fixed immortal travel to enter here. There were no mishaps or setbacks. Moreover, this time, he directly entered the central area of the Gu formation. This was a large, desolate land of purple sand. In this desolate land, some rarely seen and extremely valuable immortal materials were spread. His memories were still very clear. Fang Yuan did not even need to put in the effort to search. He directly ran to each key area and collected the immortal materials. These immortal materials were of extremely high rank. They were basically all at rank 8, and there were even some top-quality rank 8 materials with such dense Dao marks that their light could be seen with naked eyes. Like the tiger-striped honey bee's wings, the fragment of the immemorial desolate beast cloud phoenix's body. Altogether, 18 immortal materials ended up in Fang Yuan's hands once again. He then moved to the middle of the desolate land of purple sand, where he discovered those multi-layered Gu formations once again. He carefully inspected the contents and saw it was just like his previous life. He left the Gu formations as they were, but destroyed all the crucial thoughts. Fang Yuan naturally did not intend to leave the life and death immortal aperture method for others. Before leaving, Fang Yuan gave the place a final glance, sighing inwardly. He knew that outside the desolate land of purple sand, there were large numbers of desolate plants and desolate beast corpses, but these immortal materials only looked impressive. Once they were picked up, they would all turn into purple sand. Thus, Fang Yuan did not even look at them. In his previous life, he had to painstakingly scheme, joining Zombie Alliance's headquarters first, then after being schemed by Blazing Heaven Demoness, he was thrown into Northern Plains' Dark Flow Giant City. He had to deceive several immortal zombies before he was able to enter Earth Trench. He kept on scheming the whole way, not hesitating to be swallowed by the mouth earthworm, then arriving at the nest of Xianxia octopuses, searching painstakingly, taking the risk to unravel a small portion of the Gu formation, before he was finally able to enter this hidden space. But this life, because of rebirth, he went straight to his destination, getting the maximum benefits while spending the least amount of time and energy. The whole process was very simple. It was like a dream. Using fixed immortal travel again, Fang Yuan left the place and returned to Hu Immortal Blessed Land. Change form Immortal Gu's refinement failed. Not only was the success Dao mark lost, most of the immortal materials were also destroyed. To prepare for this single refinement of change form Immortal Gu, he had taken out all his assets. After rebirth, he could be said to be dirt poor. But now, he had these precious immortal materials as very timely assistance. These immortal materials were extremely valuable. If their value was to be maximized, it would undoubtedly be by keeping them until a time when Fang Yuan refined rank 8 Immortal Gu. However, the time needed for this was too long. Fang Yuan's cultivation was still at the bottom tier of rank 6, advancing to rank 8 was a distant prospect and not within the foreseeable future. Fang Yuan had already considered how to make full use of these immortal materials. Like in his previous life, Fang Yuan put several of the immortal materials in Treasure Yellow Heaven, causing a huge commotion among the Gu immortals. Even in Treasure Yellow Heaven, these immortal materials were extremely rare and were very sought after. Fang Yuan easily traded them for the things he wanted, and fed all the immortal Gu he had, except for Self-Strength Immortal Gu and Wisdom Gu. Taking a look over the immortal Gu Fang Yuan had. Strength Path, Self-Strength, Pulling Mountain, Pulling Water, Iron Crown Eagle Strength, Eat Strength. Star Path, Star Shoot, Star Mark, Starlight. Luck Path, Connect Luck, Time Luck, Calamity Beckoning. Besides these, there was also his first vital Gu, Spring Autumn Cicada, the extremely practical Space Path Immortal Gu, Fixed Immortal Travel, the less frequently used Poison Path Immortal Gu, Woman's Heart, a Soul Path Immortal Gu, Cleanse Soul, and a Wisdom Path Immortal Gu, Unravel Mystery. In his previous life, Fang Yuan had changed form Immortal Gu at this time. But after rebirth, the refinement had failed, and change form Immortal Gu did not exist. As for the rank 9 Wisdom Gu, Fang Yuan could not refine it, so it was temporarily placed in Hu Immortal Blessed Land. Thus, whether it could be considered Fang Yuan's Immortal Gu was debatable. Normally, most rank 6 Gu immortals only had Mortal Gu and not even one Immortal Gu. The number of Immortal Gu Fang Yuan had already numbered 16, without counting Wisdom Gu. As such, the burden of feeding the Immortal Gu was extremely heavy and had always been on Fang Yuan's mind. The feeding issue of the Immortal Gu was resolved for now. Fang Yuan could relax for the moment. Land Spirit. Fang Yuan softly spoke in the secret room. Master, I am here. The Land Spirit Little Hu Immortal swiftly appeared, beaming with a smile, and hugged Fang Yuan's leg. Master, I didn't disturb you because you were busy, but I really missed you. Little Hu Immortal said while shaking her furry tail, before saying some childlike words, although Master has turned ugly. Fang Yuan laughed, stroking Little Hu Immortal's head as he instructed her, go command all the hairy men in the stone nests to start refining only air sac Gu. Yes, Master. Little Hu Immortal immediately replied. You can leave now. Okay. Little Hu Immortal gazed at Fang Yuan with a reluctant look, before disappearing. Fang Yuan's thoughts shifted, as he activated Fixed Immortal Travel, leaving Hu Immortal Blessed Land. When he appeared again, he was already at Xianxia Blessed Land. At this time, Xianxia Land Spirit had not changed his nature, and was still that long-robed, white hair, and seemingly sage-like land spirit. Why are you here? That immortal material I wanted, did you get it? If you didn't, then there is no need for discussion. Xianxia Land Spirit waved his large sleeves and spoke with a cold and detached expression when he saw Fang Yuan. Because of his excessive demands, Fang Yuan's relationship with Xianxia Land Spirit had already turned cold. Fang Yuan wanted to request for Xianxia Land Spirit's help, but Xianxia Land Spirit's condition was extremely harsh, asking Fang Yuan to get a type of immortal material. And this immortal material's origin was from the immemorial 9 heavens, and was extremely rare even in Treasure Yellow Heaven. If not for this, Xianxia Land Spirit would not have asked Fang Yuan to do this. Of course I have it, take a look. Fang Yuan laughed, not minding Xianxia Land Spirit's cold attitude. You really got it? Xianxia Land Spirit looked at the immortal material in Fang Yuan's hand, his expression immediately relaxed and his tone revealed his incredulous feelings. Clearly, he had not been optimistic about Fang Yuan's chances. Rightfully so. The task of getting this immortal material had already surpassed Fang Yuan's capabilities. At least, that was the case in his previous life. But in this life, after Fang Yuan was reborn, he made use of the rank 8 immortal materials in his hands. Why would he fear not being able to purchase goods of this level? Fang Yuan handed the poisonous flower petals to Xianxia Land Spirit. I need a certain amount of Exert Strength Gu and Disappointment Gu, along with large numbers of Star Thought Gu. Fang Yuan already knew, Xianxia Blessed Land was extremely special, the space inside was so large that it had already surpassed most grotto heavens. This was because Xianxia Land Spirit had merged the rank 8 immortal Gu house, refinement cauldron, into the whole blessed land. Countless hairy men lived here, the number beyond imagination. The land of cloud soil in front of him was only a layer of clouds in Xianxia Blessed Land. Under this layer were 3 continents, where large numbers of hairy men lived. Specializing in Gu refinement, they selected talents, living and working in peace and happiness. With the help of these hairy men, it was extremely simple for Xianxia land spirit to refine and exert strength Gu, disappointment Gu and star thought Gu. On the basis of this immortal material, I will do you this favor. Xianxia land spirit replied, before adding, but next time, I hope to get scales of the half-moon Qilin, at least 30 of them. Otherwise, I won't agree to any of your requests. His tone was still rather frigid, but his expression was no longer cold. Fang Yuan nodded, and without speaking further, he activated fixed immortal travel and left. He possessed the life and death immortal aperture revival method, as well as a strength path version of Nirvana fire, so he could get rid of the immortal zombie body and become a living person. But for the moment, Fang Yuan had no plans to do so. Becoming alive would only mean having the potential to advance, his cultivation would still be at the bottom tier of rank 6. He would also lose his immortal zombie body, and his battle strength would instead decrease. More importantly, Fang Yuan did not have much lifespan left, and thus would not be able to use the light of wisdom. Fang Yuan asked Xianxia land spirit to refine and exert strength Gu and disappointment Gu as early preparations for the future. What he had paid for this was an immortal material, while Xianxia land spirit was only refining mortal Gu. Although the numbers were somewhat huge, Fang Yuan had still incurred a loss. But Fang Yuan did not seriously concern himself with it. He had his own plans regarding Xianxia land spirit, but it was not the time for them yet. Fang Yuan left Xianxia blessed land, directly arriving at a certain village in central continent. There was an extraordinary tree here. It was a spring dream fruit tree. It indeed still exists. Fang Yuan hid his figure and inspected it, feeling some joy. In his previous life, he had obtained information about this tree from Mo Yao's will, but before he could collect the spring dream fruits, this tree was cut down by someone. But after rebirth, Fang Yuan had no need to join Zombie Alliance and search for the revival method. He was able to come here half a year early, making up for a regret in his previous life. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 973, Spring Dream Fruit Tree. Chapter 973, Spring Dream Fruit Tree. Translator. Atlas Studios. Editor. Atlas Studios. Spring dream fruit trees were a very special type of plant. They could be any kind of fruit tree, but only extremely few fruit trees could become spring dream fruit trees. One of these spring dream fruit trees was next to a farmer's home. The head of the family was an old man, known as Old Man Chen. Son, in half a year, you will be married. I will build a house for you. The main girder of the house will be built using this fire date tree. Old Man Chen stood in front of the tree, and patted its thick bark, as he spoke to his son who was at the side. The son looked at this date tree and gave a thumbs up, pleased, Father, this is a good idea. This date tree is older than the history of our village. I remember that it has already stopped producing dates. It will be useless even if it keeps on growing. Cutting it down to construct the main girder for my house will be putting it to good use. Fang Yuan coldly snorted. He was standing not far away, but was invisible. Old Man Chen and his son, who were not even Gu masters, were unable to sense him. Finding out by chance the reason for the spring dream fruit tree being cut down, Fang Yuan inwardly frowned. This spring dream fruit tree's existence was supported by this date tree. A true spring dream fruit tree was a tree that existed in dreams and did not have a material body. But it required a real tree to be the foundation for it to live long. This date tree was several thousand years old. Only old trees like this could be used by the spring dream fruit tree. Naturally, the specific requirements involved not just age. Humans needed to be living near the tree. The dreams of these humans from generation after generation would nourish the spring dream fruit tree. In history, this place was once the base of a volcano. Because the volcano erupted every several hundred years, the large amounts of volcanic ash created fertile soil in the surroundings. Attracted by the excellent natural farmland, there would be people migrating now and then. They would gradually form villages, which would later be destroyed by the volcanic eruptions. Fire date trees were extremely resistant to heat, they could even resist lava, thus they were able to continue existing. If the date tree was cut down, the spring dream fruit tree would be destroyed. But to move the date tree, there needed to be corresponding dream path methods to move the spring dream fruit tree at the same time, otherwise Fang Yuan would only obtain an ordinary date tree and not the spring dream fruit tree. Fang Yuan did not have methods to move the spring dream fruit tree. Currently, it was not possible for him to even pick the spring dream fruits. He would need to refine some dream path mortal goo that were targeted at picking the fruits. In the past, Mo Yao seemed to have recognized the extraordinariness of this tree, but due to her limited knowledge, or perhaps she also sensed that casually picking the tree would not work, she chose to leave it behind. It seems I still need to preserve the living environment of this spring dream fruit tree for some time. Fang Yuan flicked a finger, 2 wills separately drilled into the minds of Old Man Chen and his son. The son suddenly let out tears. "Father, let's not cut down this tree. Even if it can't produce dates anymore, I want to keep on seeing it. It has accompanied me as I have grown. When I was young, I urinated on the tree. When I got slightly older, I built a swing on it. Let's forget about cutting it down." Sigh. All right. Old Man Chen's eyes had also reddened, nodding emotionally, then let it continue to grow here. "We will choose another tree, although there is not any that is as tall as this one, they will be enough for the main girder of the new house." After dealing with the mortal's thoughts, Fang Yuan arranged a goo formation here to protect the spring dream fruit tree. In the meantime, he would have to refine some corresponding dream path mortal goo to pick up the fruits. This required time. Almost all the refinement materials for dream path mortal goo were derived from dream realm.s. According to how my previous life went, after refining change form immortal goo, I helped Tai Bai Yunxing pass his tribulation, then participated in the battle to defend Langyip blessed land. After the battle, I took up the identity of Xianxia to enter Eastern Sea and participate in the invasion of Yu Lu blessed land. In this process, because of the collapse of Starry Sky Grotto Heaven, I was invited by Immortal Crane's sect to invade a fragment world of the Grotto Heaven. After this matter, Blazing Heaven Demonis appeared, defeating the immemorial desolate beast One Finger Flow Shark. I was forcefully recruited by Blazing Heaven Demonis, then returned to Northern Plains and obtained the Earth Trench inheritance. After that, I took part in killing He Cheng, then was forced to set a new agreement with Blazing Heaven Demonis and the others, then we went on to seize Luo Pa Valley. Finally, I took part in the Battle of Tian Mountain. This time, after my rebirth luckily succeeded, my main objective is still the Immortal Gu House Graceful Chaotic Duel stage. As long as I can become the owner of this Immortal Gu House, I can smoothly suppress the rank 8 Great Strength True Martial Immortal Zombie. In that case, my gains will be huge. Although Fang Yuan's plan of taking the Immortal Gu House early had failed, how could one failure shake his resolution? Graceful Chaotic Duel stage had not appeared now, then he could only wait for the moment it appeared. Originally, Fang Yuan's plan had been to take the Immortal Gu House, then suppress the rank 8 Great Strength True Martial Immortal Zombie. He would wait until the alliance agreement expired, then he would use the Immortal Gu House to deal with He Lu Lan, Fairy Li Shan and Blazing Heaven Demonis. Maybe he could even borrow the rank 8 Immortal Gu House, Refinement Cauldron, from Langya Blessed Land, and seize their Immortal Gu, obtaining the greatest benefits. However, he could not do that now. Without the Immortal Gu House, Fang Yuan's strength was clearly weaker than He Lu Lan's side. Even if he had many plans and plots, without strength, they could not come to fruition. After all, He Lu Lan was also a formidable character, she was not someone who could be trifled with easily. This was clear from when she killed her own father, then disguised herself to enter He tribe. Fang Yuan's original plan was wonderful, but reality was cruel. Fang Yuan made calculations on the basis of the worst possible situation. If Graceful Chaotic Duel stage appeared at the same time as in his previous life, then he would be unable to covertly take this Immortal Gu House. The likelihood of this was huge. When Graceful Chaotic Duel stage appeared, it produced a grand sight. The battle scene of that day in history kept on being displayed. If that is the case, then I can only follow my previous life, and participate in the gambling contest between the southern border Gu immortals, and personally entering the demonic path side on Etion Mountain. If he went in like this, the risks would be extremely huge. He would have to face the Gu immortals of southern border, Shadow Sect, and also Heavenly Court. It would be entering great danger. But how can there be gains without any danger? Fang Yuan was cautious, but he did not lack the mindset to take risks. The huge benefits had already made him resolve to take the risk. He had been reborn, and had plenty of experiences and knowledge of his previous life. If he did not dare to conspire, then Fang Yuan considered this to simply be cowardly. Since the protection of the Spring Dream Fruit Tree has been ensured, I can put it aside for the moment. I should change my plans. I need to ally with He Lu Lan again. Fang Yuan had self-strength. Immortal Gu, Blazing Heaven Demoness would definitely target him. If Fang Yuan obtained the Immortal Gu house early, then he would not be afraid of Blazing Heaven Demoness. But the situation happened to be different now. Fang Yuan needed to obtain the Immortal Gu house, and in the process, he might have to face the southern border Gu immortals, Shadow Sect and Heavenly Court. Now, he needed the strength of others. Tai Bai Yun Sheng, He Lu Lan, Fairy Li Shan, Blazing Heaven Demoness and others, especially Blazing Heaven Demoness, with her rank 8 cultivation, she could add much power to the Immortal Gu house. In his previous life, Fang Yuan had suffered from going in alone without help. When Shadow Sect mobilized, He Lu Lan and Fairy Li Shan were both in Shaohun Blessed Land, using Luo Pa Valley to cultivate their soul. And Tai Bai Yun Sheng was still in Eastern Sea. Naturally, it was also because Fang Yuan had intentionally concealed it from He Lu Lan, Fairy Li Shan and the others, sneaking into Etion Mountain alone. Even if Fang Yuan revived, he would only have rank 6 bottom-tier cultivation. To advance to rank 7, he needed to go through many earthly calamities and 3 heavenly tribulations. In the Blessed Land's time, it would take 300 years. There was clearly not enough time for Fang Yuan to do this. Of course, he could also devour Hu Immortal Blessed Land and Star Form Blessed Land, but his body had a Strength Path Immortal Aperture which did not relate to these blessed lands. Right now, the utmost priority was to turn enemies into allies and strategize from there. Fang Yuan wanted to eliminate He Lu Lan and the others, but this kind of impatience could spoil his grand scheme. There were many times when one needed to compromise. To accomplish one's aims in the world, it was necessary for any person to compromise, and to learn how to compromise. No matter how high someone's position was, they would need to follow this. Giving up small benefits for greater benefits, this was a display of a person's growth. Using fixed immortal travel again, Fang Yuan returned to Hu Immortal Blessed Land. In his previous life, when Fang Yuan wanted to target He Lu Lan, she had already left Hu Immortal Blessed Land for the outside world. Her tracks were concealed, and as such Fang Yuan was not able to make a move against her. But in this life, at this time, He Lu Lan still was staying in Hu Immortal Blessed Land. She was using her Strength Chi Immortal Gu to help the hairy men in the stone nests to refine Air Sac Gu. When Fang Yuan found He Lu Lan, she was within a stone nest. She was holding an Information Path Mortal Gu in her hand, frowning at the information brought by the Gu worm. Seeing Fang Yuan, He Lu Lan raised the Information Path Mortal Gu and asked, "Did you hear about the matter of the 10 great ancient sects of Central Continent ambushing Song Zixing?" Fang Yuan smiled lightly, "Of course I did. This matter can be kept secret from mortals, but it cannot be hidden from Gu immortals. Even though Central Continent's 10 great ancient sects are hiding their traces, the other Gu immortals in Central Continent would not want to keep this a secret. Right now, they are looking forward to seeing some drama in the 10 great ancient sections." Oh! He Lu Lan sighed deeply, such a prime opportunity, but we missed it. If we could kill Song Zixing during this period, we might be able to obtain Star Form Blessed Land. Fang Yuan glanced at He Lu Lan, sighing internally, this person really is formidable. She already had attitude Gu, but had restrained herself. Not only was he not informed, she did not even inform her closest friend and relative, her Aunt Fairy Li Shan. To deceive the enemy, one had to start from deceiving those they were closest to. But Fang Yuan was like her. He had obtained possession of Star Form Blessed Land, but had deliberately concealed the information, keeping He Lu Lan in the dark. In his previous life, were it not for blazing heaven demoness, this secret would not have been revealed. It was because Fang Yuan and He Lu Lan were similar kinds of people, that Fang Yuan appreciated He Lu Lan while also being apprehensive at the same time. If possible, he truly wanted to get rid of her and get rid of her quickly. But destiny worked in mysterious ways. Fang Yuan had to deepen his collaboration with He Lu Lan to obtain the immortal Gu House graceful chaotic duel stage. Therefore, at the next moment, Fang Yuan took out self-strength immortal Gu, placing it in his hand and holding it out for He Lu Lan. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 974, Difficult Interaction with He Lu Lan. Chapter 974, Difficult Interaction with He Lu Lan. Translator. Atlas Studios. Editor. Atlas Studios. Self-strength immortal Gu. Fang Yuan's action shook He Lu Lan's mind. This immortal Gu was originally hers, but because she failed her tribulation, she had been trapped in a dream realm and was later saved by Fang Yuan. The result was that this immortal Gu became the price for saving He Lu Lan, ending up in Fang Yuan's hands. This self-strength immortal Gu had huge significance to He Lu Lan. Not only was it very suitable for He Lu Lan as she possessed the great strength true martial physique and cultivated strength path, this self-strength immortal Gu had been refined by He Lu Lan's mother, Su Xianxia, and was a memento she left to He Lu Lan. Thus, self-strength immortal Gu had extremely great importance to He Lu Lan. He Lu Lan had been extremely unwilling to give it, but she had no other choice. She thought about this immortal Gu day and night, and really wished she could seize it back from Fang Yuan. However, she had restrained this impulse. On one hand, it was because Gu worms were very difficult to take away and could be destroyed with a thought from their owner. On another hand, it was because He Lu Lan was astute. She deeply understood there was an art called compromise when interacting with people. He Lu Lan and Fang Yuan were natural allies. He Lu Lan still needed to rely on the Guts Gu business to support her cultivation. Working together created benefits, while being enemies formed losses, so He Lu Lan had continued to endure. Besides the first meeting after waking up, He Lu Lan had not raised any objection towards Fang Yuan having self-strength immortal Gu. It was as if she had already forgotten this. She had deep shrewdness. But now, Fang Yuan was suddenly handing over the self-strength immortal Gu, like he was returning it to its rightful owner. He Lu Lan was caught unprepared and was unable to conceal her desire. But at once, He Lu Lan calmed down, her frown deepened as she fixed her sharp gaze on Fang Yuan. She had already snapped back to awareness, and she was filled with vigilance. She knew Fang Yuan's nature, and just like Fang Yuan, who had both appreciation and apprehension towards her, she also felt the same about Fang Yuan. Why would Fang Yuan hand over self-strength immortal Gu for no reason? This is impossible. Then what is he planning? As if seeing He Lu Lan's doubts, Fang Yuan chuckled, "Don't be nervous. Self-strength immortal Gu is rather suitable for me as well, but I believe this immortal Gu is more important to you. Like they say, a gentleman doesn't take advantage of others, isn't that the case?" He Lu Lan's eyes flashed with dark light. She glanced at the self-strength immortal Gu in Fang Yuan's hand, before fixing her gaze on Fang Yuan, sneering, "You are a gentleman. Just say what you want to say." Fang Yuan rubbed his nose, "If I speak directly, I am afraid it will scare you." He Lu Lan snorted, "Just tell me." Fang Yuan's eyes flickered, speaking in a serious tone, "Then I won't beat around the bush. I want to use this self-strength immortal Gu to trade for your attitude Gu." "What?" He Lu Lan's body shook, the ferocious glint in her eyes increased, and she almost took a step back involuntarily. "I have kept the matter of acquiring attitude Gu extremely secret. How did he know? I hid it from even little Ant. Besides heaven and earth, only I know." The shock He Lu Lan felt was hard to express. This was her greatest secret, but it was suddenly exposed by Fang Yuan. She could not help being shocked. Killing intent surged inside her, subconsciously wanting to attack Fang Yuan. To eliminate the person who knows her secret. This was the nature of ferocious characters. However, at this time, Fang Yuan took the initiative to retreat a step. This movement was simple, but had subtle effects on He Lu Lan's current mentality. He Lu Lan was like a frightened beast, but Fang Yuan moved away some distance and showed a harmless smile, emitting good intention, making He Lu Lan feel safer. He Lu Lan's eyes squinted into a slit, fixing her gaze at Fang Yuan. Her expression was cold as ice, her killing intent had not dispelled yet, instead it was restrained for now. It seems you truly possess the legendary attitude Gu. Fang Yuan pretended to be observing her expression, and spoke with a surprised tone. He Lu Lan stared blankly before speaking in fury, "You tricked me?" "Of course not." Fang Yuan smiled bitterly, shrugging his shoulders. "Do you still remember my master, Purple Mountain True Monarch?" He Lu Lan took a deep breath, hearing the name of Purple Mountain True Monarch again, she was filled with wariness. She knew this Purple Mountain True Monarch. Fang Yuan was his disciple and so was Tai Bai Yunsheng. That was the reason why Fang Yuan called Tai Bai Yunsheng senior brother. Of course, all this was false information. In his previous life, even Blazing Heaven Demoness had been deceived. "It was your master who informed you?" He Lu Lan asked. Her killing intent went down to rock bottom. From her view, Fang Yuan had huge backing. It was very difficult to kill Fang Yuan, let alone Purple Mountain True Monarch, who was not someone she could handle. After all, at this time, Fairy Li Shan had yet to fully reconcile with Blazing Heaven Demoness. Fang Yuan chuckled, "What do you think?" He Lu Lan snorted, thoughts churning in her mind. "Purple Mountain True Monarch actually knows my secret, he indeed has vast powers and is unfathomable. Fortunately, we have set an agreement with Fang Yuan, but Fang Yuan is really scheming. No matter how important self-strength Immortal Gu is, it is only a rank 6 Immortal Gu, how could it be traded for my attitude Gu?" "Humph." He Lu Lan immediately refused Fang Yuan's suggestion. "My attitude Gu is a rank 8 Immortal Gu. As long as it is someone with a thinking mind, they can wear it and use it. It is a legendary Gu worm recorded in the legends of Renzu. You are actually thinking of using the rank 6 self-strength Immortal Gu to trade for my attitude Gu. Hehe, aren't you daydreaming?" Fang Yuan pondered it before speaking. "Then how will you trade for it?" "Not trading." He Lu Lan immediately replied firmly. Fang Yuan's expression sank, letting out a dangerous aura. "He Lu Lan, think properly. I will remind you this is my territory, my Hu Immortal Blessed Land." He Lu Lan laughed loudly. "Ha ha ha, so what? Don't forget the agreement between us, it has not ended yet, allies cannot attack each other." "Of course." He Lu Lan added, "You have your master's backing, maybe you have already undone your restrictions. But do you think I, He Lu Lan, am afraid of death? You underestimate me too much. Even if I die here, I will destroy all my Gu worms before I die. Also, I know all about the resources that are in your Hu Immortal Blessed Land. After the battle, how many of these resources will remain? Tai Bai Yunsheng's landscape as before cannot restore these resources." Fang Yuan could not help but laugh. In his previous life, he had threatened Blazing Heaven Demoness by showing a fearless stance towards death. This life, after he was reborn, He Lu Lan was using the same method to pressure him, and he similarly had to accept and go along with it. Fang Yuan's expression changed, laughing and clapping. "He Lu Lan, I wouldn't dare to underestimate you, it was only a joke. Using a rank 6 Immortal Gu in exchange for a rank 8, your joke only reveals your greed and stupidity." He Lu Lan coldly berated, without giving any face to Fang Yuan. Fang Yuan's eyes flickered with sharp light. "Then I will add some more on the table. How about I give up in contesting for Star Form Blessed Land?" He Lu Lan shook her head, "Giving up in contesting for it? Even if you hand over both Hu Immortal Blessed Land and Star Form Blessed Land to me, I won't trade it. Attitude Gu is not only a rank 8 Immortal Gu, the requirements to use it are very minimal, it doesn't need immortal essence and only consumes mental energy. That means, even I, a rank 6 Gu Immortal, can use this rank 8 Immortal Gu. This kind of Immortal Gu is a peerless treasure, I absolute won't give it up. Don't mention trading for it. Fang Yuan, you are a smart person, you won't make useless efforts, right?" Fang Yuan nodded, sighing. "I understand. Then I shall take a step back, I want to use self-strength immortal Gu to exchange for your slavery immortal Gu. He Lu Lan's eyebrows raised. She had a slavery immortal Gu, she had obtained it during the final moments in Imperial Court Blessed Land, after deceiving Giant Sun's will. He Lu Lan sank into silence, Fang Yuan's offer enticed her. As far as she was concerned, self-strength immortal Gu's value was undoubtedly far above slavery immortal Gu. He Lu Lan gazed at Fang Yuan's eyes, my slavery immortal Gu is only rank 6. You are using rank 6 in exchange for rank 6, this is feasible. But slavery immortal Gu cannot be used repeatedly, it can only be used once. Trading self-strength for slavery, don't you think you are losing out? Yes, there is some loss. Fang Yuan laughed, before raising a finger, so I still have a condition, I want to borrow attitude Gu for some time. He Lu Lan did not reply, sinking into silence. Fang Yuan was trying all kinds of methods to borrow attitude Gu, this made her acutely sense the importance of attitude Gu to Fang Yuan. However, how much importance it had, He Lu Lan was not too sure, she needed to probe. Therefore, she refused, I will not lend attitude Gu. Fang Yuan's expression sank, then forget it. He then turned around, leaving. He Lu Lan stood at her spot, watching coldly without moving. Fang Yuan moved several steps before stopping, turning around with a bitter smile as he faced He Lu Lan again, I only want to borrow attitude Gu for 3 years. 3 years? I wouldn't agree even if it was 3 days. He Lu Lan's expression was cold and ruthless, internally, however, she was excited. She saw an opportunity to rip off Fang Yuan. He Lu Lan's concealment was good, but she was in the end still young, and Fang Yuan was an old monster who had lived hundreds of years. Fang Yuan gave a displeased snort, how could he not know He Lu Lan's current thoughts? He threw out his trump card, it seems you don't want revenge. You have such a good opportunity in front of you to kill He Cheng. But it feels like you don't want it. What? He Cheng. He Lu Lan's eyes flashed with a ferocious glint, her expression fluctuating. Although He Cheng was her own father, the hatred between them was so great, she would not rest until he was dead. Killing He Cheng and taking revenge was already the greatest obsession of He Lu Lan. This obsession was so deep that it had affected her cultivation, becoming a permanent scar in her mind. In Fang Yuan's previous life, He Lu Lan had killed He Cheng, got back the self-strength immortal Gu, dispelled the scar in her mind, and found herself, so when she activated strength path phantoms, they turned into her appearance, and not the brawny burly man. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 975, New Alliance Agreement. Chapter 975, New Alliance Agreement. Translator. Atlas Studios. Editor. Atlas Studios. The negotiation with He Lu Lan lasted for 6 hours. After it ended, even Fang Yuan with his immortal zombie body felt extremely exhausted, his pitiful immortal zombie mind could not think on its own easily, who knew how many thoughts he wasted in the process. He Lu Lan also wasn't better off, she felt this negotiation was much more exhausting than an intense battle of life and death, a feeling of weakness emitted from deep within her, her tongue went dry and she was feeling dizzy. After the negotiation, Fang Yuan brought over Tai by Yunsheng, and formed a new agreement with He Lu Lan and Fairy Li Shan. Fang Yuan handed over self-strength immortal Gu, trading for He Lu Lan's slavery immortal Gu, as well as borrowing attitude Gu for 1 year. Fang Yuan also had to provide an opportunity to kill He Cheng for He Lu Lan and Fairy Li Shan. As for Star Form Blessed Land, everyone would continue to participate fairly. Besides these, Fang Yuan also obtained He Lu Lan's consent to connect their luck. The new agreement was tightly linked together in all aspects, even Fairy Li Shan with her information path quasi-great grandmaster attainment would need to spend several years to break the agreement. More importantly, it also took account of Blazing Heaven Demonis. There was a condition inside that stated more allies could be added, but the new allies must follow the agreement. Moreover, both sides could not get the help of external forces to target each other. Both sides would also have a one-time opportunity to request for support, and once used, the other side must be assisted. The compensation after the matter would be calculated according to the specific situation. The agreement was extremely stringent, the division of profits was stipulated in detail. Fang Yuan used He Lu Lan's apprehension towards Purple Mountain True Monarch, and his previous life's memories, to reach his goal. One who could only fight was no more than a boor. Battles could not resolve all issues. Man is the spirit of all living beings, humans possessed great wisdom. If they used this wisdom only to fight, they would be letting down this gift from heaven. After the agreement was made, Fang Yuan's situation had changed greatly. First of all, He Lu Lan was Fairy Black Moon, with vigorous luck that would not decline for a long time. Fang Yuan connected his luck with hers, offsetting Spring-Autumn Cicada's flaw. Second, he was able to borrow the rank 8 Attitude Gu. This immortal Gu was used in the past by Thieving Heaven Demon Venerable. It was the core Gu of the legendary immortal killer move, Familiar Face. Back then, Thieving Heaven Demon Venerable had only been rank 6 Gu immortal, but by using this killer move, he deceived 2 rank 8 Gu immortals in a row, obtaining large amounts of treasures as well as causing the 2 rank 8 Gu immortals to misunderstand each other, indirectly causing their deaths. Fang Yuan had lost change form Immortal Gu, but obtained Attitude Gu, which was countless times better. His improved vaguely familiar face killer move's effect would be sharply increased to an astonishing level. Fang Yuan was now confident of deceiving even rank 8 Gu immortals. Lastly was Blazing Heaven Demonis. In his previous life, Blazing Heaven Demonis, this rank 8 Gu immortal, had schemed against Fang Yuan. This life, Fang Yuan had reached a new agreement with Fairy Li Shan and others, which could be taken as stopping Blazing Heaven Demonis' scheme early. Blazing Heaven Demonis' guilt and affection towards He Lu Lan was her biggest weakness. Fang Yuan was planning to, inadvertently, make use of Blazing Heaven Demonis. Even if Blazing Heaven Demonis did not join the new alliance, when He Lu Lan falls into a predicament while assisting Fang Yuan, could Blazing Heaven Demonis do nothing? It could be said that He Lu Lan was the best tool to control Blazing Heaven Demonis. He Lu Lan's side is no longer an obstacle to me. After turning enemies into allies, my plans should now go much more smoothly. But He Lu Lan and the others are extremely shrewd, they are not easy to fool. They are now very satisfied with this new alliance agreement, but they will slowly realize the enormous advantage I am holding. At that time, they will definitely be displeased and may even try to go against me. Because of his previous life's memories, Fang Yuan was able to gain the advantage. But he had not removed his vigilance against He Lu Lan's side. Wait until I possess Graceful Chaotic Dual Stage, then the course will be set, the contrast between the strength of our sides will be overturned. Even if He Lu Lan's side is unsatisfied, they won't be able to create any problems. Fang Yuan did not hesitate on giving up Self-Strength Immortal Gu, it was because he was planning for the Immortal Gu House, Graceful Chaotic Dual Stage, and the Great Strength True Martial Immortal Zombie. With Self-Strength Immortal Gu, he would only have the first style of Myriad Self, at best, his strength would only be rank 7. But with the Immortal Gu House, Fang Yuan did not need to fear even rank 8s, easily advancing or retreating. After obtaining Attitude Gu, Fang Yuan stored it in his own immortal aperture and moved to Xianxia Blessed Land. Xianxia Land's spirit was extremely surprised, asking, "So quickly? You got what I wanted?" "No." Fang Yuan shook his head. Xianxia Land's spirit's expression immediately turned gloomy, shouting coldly, "Fang Yuan, you brat, are you disregarding my words? Before you left last time, I told you Xianxia Blessed Land is not a place for you to come whenever you want. If you don't have the immortal material I want, then don't come bothering me. I won't agree to any of your requests." "Is that so?" Fang Yuan chuckled, his attitude calm. "What if I want to use my final opportunity to request you to refine Gu for me?" "Ah." Xianxia Land's spirit was staring blankly, lost for words. Fang Yuan had stolen Ma Hongyun's fortuitous encounter, arriving at Xianxia Blessed Land with the identity of an inheritor of Thieving Heaven. Because Long-Hair Ancestor had made an agreement with Thieving Heaven Demon Venerable, Xianxia Land's spirit had to refine Gu 3 times for Fang Yuan without any costs. If refining mortal Gu, Xianxia Land's spirit must guarantee the success of the Gu refinement. If refining immortal Gu, Xianxia Land's spirit could fail, but the materials for the Gu refinement must come from his own pockets. Feng Yuan had used two opportunities. The first was to refine Stargate Gu. Although this Gu worm was only a mortal Gu, it had provided huge help to Feng Yuan at that time. The second was to refine second aperture Gu. During the Gu refinement process, Feng Yuan drank 4 types of fine wines, obtaining divine travel Gu. Finally, he used divine travel Gu to trade for gruel mud immortal Gu from Xianxia Land's spirit. Thus, Feng Yuan only had one remaining opportunity to request Gu refinement. Xianxia Land's spirit said sternly, "Kid, what Gu do you want to refine?" Feng Yuan laughed heartily, patting Xianxia Land's spirit's shoulder. "I only said, if, I don't truly want to waste the third opportunity now." Xianxia Land's spirit snorted, brushing away Feng Yuan's hand, and dusting off his clothing with extremely dislike. But in the end, he did not speak anymore. As long as Feng Yuan did not use his final opportunity, he could casually enter Xianxia Blessed Land. Xianxia Land's spirit knew this was Feng Yuan's warning towards him, even a verbal attack. But he was unable to do anything about it, so he felt very displeased. "If you don't want to use the final chance, then leave quickly," Xianxia Land's spirit said, displeased. Feng Yuan unconcernedly shrugged his shoulders. "Although I did not get the immortal material you mentioned, but I brought this. Take a look." The corners of Xianxia Land's spirit's lips curled up. "Brat, you want to deceive me? Humph, you think immortal materials can easily substitute for each other? I cannot." He suddenly stopped speaking. His eyes flew wide open, his gaze intensified sharply as it fixed upon the immortal material in Feng Yuan's hand. This immortal material naturally was not a simple one, it was a rank 8 immortal material Feng Yuan had picked up inside the Gu formation in Earth Trench. Xianxia Land's spirit's eyes were captivated. This looks like fragment of the immemorial desolate beast Cloud Phoenix's body." Xianxia Land's spirit stuttered in an incredulous tone. Feng Yuan gave a thumbs up, as expected of Xianxia Land's spirit. "You are correct. After I obtained this immortal material, I had to spend some effort before I found out its origin." As he said this, Feng Yuan handed this immortal material to Xianxia Land's spirit. Xianxia Land's spirit did not restrain himself, he quickly stretched his hand, grabbing the immortal material and put it in front of his eyes, examining carefully. Good stuff, good stuff. Sure enough, it is a fragment of a cloud phoenix. This is a rare object. What dog's hit luck do you have, to actually get such a treasure? Xianxia Land's spirit muttered non-stop. He was extremely enticed, and his gaze looked somewhat infatuated. No matter which Xianxia Land's spirit it was, they both originated from Long Hair Ancestor. Long Hair Ancestor excelled in Gu refinement, and was also infatuated with it. Xianxia Land's spirit had also inherited this nature. Right now, as Xianxia Land's spirit looked at this rank 8 immortal material, his thoughts started to fluctuate. He had bitterly sought for such immortal materials, but had not found them. If he had this, the gaps in materials for a lot of immortal Gu recipes could be filled up. The Gu refinement materials for 1 or 2 immortal Gu would even be collected entirely, and the Gu refinement could begin immediately. Xianxia Land's spirit had already stopped paying attention to Feng Yuan, his gaze was tightly fixed at the Cloud Phoenix's fragment, inspecting it from all directions. He was almost salivating. Even in Xianxia Blessed Land, there were very few rank 8 immortal materials. Why? It was simple, they were hard to gather. Like this Cloud Phoenix's fragment, its main body was an immemorial desolate beast Cloud Phoenix. This Cloud Phoenix was extremely powerful, able to match rank 8 Gu immortals. To gather this immortal material, normally speaking, one had to kill the Cloud Phoenix. Gu immortals were few in numbers, rank 8 Gu immortals were even fewer, only a handful of them existed. They had to consider their tribulations and their own safety, and would not easily start a battle. Unless they had some specific demands, there would be extremely few rank 8 immortal materials entering the market. This was also the reason why Fang Yuan had only put 2 immortal materials in Treasure Yellow Heaven, yet he was easily able to trade for all kinds of food for immortal Gu. Even Langya Land Spirit's main body, Long Hair Ancestor, did not have too much capability to personally gather rank 8 immortal materials. One of the reasons he agreed to refine Gu for thieving Heaven Demon Venerable and Giant Sun Immortal Venerable was to borrow the strength of the rank 9 Venerables to gather rank 8 immortal materials. Fang Yuan saw Langya Land Spirit's expression, and smiled. He then took out another rank 8 immortal material, and intentionally asked, Langya Land Spirit, help me check the origins of this immortal material. Ah! Langya Land Spirit raised his head to take a glance, immediately letting out a loud and shocked scream. His eyes were wild with joy. Heavens, isn't this the wing of a tiger-striped honey bee? Look, such beautiful lights from Dao marks. The metal path Dao marks on this wing are so dense that we can see the light from the Dao marks with our naked eyes. Brat, how could you obtain something of this level? It simply angers me to death. I searched so hard for so many years, but even I have barely over 20 of them. They are so precious that I am not willing to use them. Fang Yuan laughed loudly. What if I say I picked them up, do you believe me? Saying this, he immediately took back the Cloud Phoenix's fragment from Langya Land Spirit's hand. Langya Land Spirit was caught unprepared, and after he reacted, he gave a miserable howl, feeling like a piece of his heart had been cut out. He stamped his foot and shouted, What are you doing? Doing what? Fang Yuan had a baffled expression. This belongs to me, are you thinking of stealing it? Langya Land Spirit stiffened. He was not able to retort and could only glare at Fang Yuan. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 976, Familiar Face. Chapter 976, Familiar Face. Translator. Atlas Studios. Editor. Atlas Studios. Langya Land Spirit looked straight into Fang Yuan's eyes, unsure of what to say. These immortal materials were Fang Yuan's. He was so anxious that he almost scratched his own head. Fang Yuan looked at Langya Land Spirit with a smile. Not matter how bad Langya Land Spirit's attitude towards him was, as long as these immortal materials were with him, he seemed to have taken hold of Langya Land Spirit's weakness. Suddenly, Langya Land Spirit's eyes turned, and he quickly reacted. He was no longer anxious, instead sneering, Humph, brat, do I still not know you? You swindler, you don't do anything without benefits. Speak, what advantage you want to take from me? Fang Yuan pretended to be unhappy. Your words are really wrong. I didn't come to take advantage of you, but to do a fair transaction with you. Hee hee. Langya Land Spirit was already somewhat prepared for Fang Yuan's shamelessness. Speak up, don't talk in a roundabout way. Fang Yuan drooped his eyelids, staring at the immortal materials in his hands. Since you are so forthright, then I will speak directly. Can I ask if you have the immortal killer move Familiar Face? Langya Land Spirit was stunned before asking back, how did you know I have Thieving Heaven Demon Venerable's signature killer move? Fang Yuan was inwardly joyous. Langya Land Spirit indeed had it. He had only made a guess about this. Thinking of the past, Langya Land Spirit lacked a desolate beast and wanted Fang Yuan to grab a living one, using the mortal killer move Unfamiliar Face as a reward to tempt Fang Yuan. Back then, when they had been discussing, Fang Yuan had asked about Familiar Face and Langya Land Spirit's original words were, Familiar Face. You are really daring. That is an immortal killer move. The core Gu is the legendary attitude Gu. Even if I give it to you, you will not be able to use it. But this killer move of mine has a huge relationship with Familiar Face. It can be said to be the former version of it. This is a mortal killer move and is suitable for you to use. Land spirits were simple and would not tell lies. Langya Land Spirit had not said that he did not have Familiar Face. He had only said that even if he gave it to Fang Yuan would not be able to use it. But Fang Yuan now already had attitude Gu with him. Thieving Heaven Demon Venerable had deceived 2 rank 8 Gu immortals with his rank 6 cultivation in his time. Fong Yuan should also be able to do it. Looking back over that time, Thieving Heaven Demon Venerable sought out my main body to refine Space Escape Gu. My main body also had been interested and worked an entire 21 years with Thieving Heaven Demon Venerable. This duration was according to the time of the 5 regions. When calculated with Xianxia Grotto Heaven's time, it would be even longer. Xianxia Land's spirit recalled those eventful years with a nostalgic expression. He paused for a moment, before continuing. In these 21 years, my main body in Thieving Heaven Demon Venerable made many attempts, but they all failed. Thieving Heaven Demon Venerable's accumulated savings were spent, and even my main body's treasury was used. My main body naturally would not accept making a loss. Thieving Heaven Demon Venerable had to bring out his resources to buy immortal materials from my main body. Unfamiliar face, vaguely familiar face and familiar face, this set of killer moves was one of them. So it was like that. Fong Yuan nodded, engraving this information in his mind. Xianxia Blessed Land indeed had deep foundations, actually having Thieving Heaven Demon Venerable's possessions. A person's wealth is their own ruin, no wonder Shadow Sect targeted them, and even Heavenly Court also attacked. Fong Yuan had also been eyeing this land of treasures, but his strength was simply not enough, and rashly attacking would only cause trouble for himself. Brat, what do you want familiar face for? He, did you experience the benefits of unfamiliar face? My things are all of top quality. But unfamiliar face is only a mortal killer move, it indeed is not suitable for your current cultivation. Xianxia Land's spirit laughed. Fong Yuan spoke frankly, I want to exchange a rank 8 immortal material for familiar face. Xianxia Land's spirit had still been laughing, but the next moment his laughter turned into anger. Brat, you really think I am stupid? You want to use a rank 8 immortal material to buy Thieving Heaven Demon Venerable's signature killer move? Keep on dreaming. Fong Yuan did not mind it, and asked with a warm attitude, then what's your price? 10 rank 8 immortal materials. This time, it was Fong Yuan's turn to change his expression. Impossible. How could I have so many in my hands? Do you really think I picked them up? He cried out in seeming seriousness, lying brazenly. Xianxia Land's spirit was in the dark. He sheepishly smiled, then ate. Fong Yuan's eyes were wide open as he shouted, 8. You are robbing me. Back then, you told me yourself that familiar face's core immortal Gu is attitude Gu. Without attitude Gu, familiar face simply cannot be used. I am only trying to use it as reference, to make my own deductions and create an immortal killer move suitable for myself. You think I will use 8 whole immortal materials in exchange for merely familiar face? Fong Yuan's saliva flew out as he shouted, landing on Xianxia Land's spirit's face. Xianxia Land's spirit looked embarrassed, retreating a few steps. He had been tricked many times by Fong Yuan, and had learned to bargain. But clearly, his experience was still not enough, and he was stumped by a few words from Fong Yuan. In the end, Xianxia Land's spirit's existence was only an obsession formed by heavenly power. They were extremely simple. Xianxia Land's spirit being able to reach this stage was already extraordinary. Fong Yuan continued to lower the price loudly with ragged breathing. According to him, familiar face had already been degraded in value to being of no worth whatsoever, while the rank 8 immortal materials' rarity and value were emphasized and enhanced countless times. Xianxia Land's spirit was unable to hold his own, and kept taking steps back in defeat. In Fong Yuan's previous life of 500 years, he had worked as a merchant. He ran a merchant caravan and built stores, earning a huge fortune, but in the end it was destroyed in just one day, breaking his habitual thought processes from Earth, and he comprehended the logic that this world was different from Earth. It was a world where the fist was strongest. Fong Yuan finally reduced the price to 5 immortal materials. This was the limit. If he tried to reduce it any further, Xianxia Land's spirit would not sell familiar face. Land spirits were simple but stubborn. However, Thieving Heaven Demon Venerable's signature move was indeed worth this much at the minimum. Xianxia Land's spirit would not make a loss. He had calculated internally, at most he could say he had sold it at base price. Fang Yuan knew he could not change the outcome, immediately paying 5 immortal materials and getting possession of familiar face. Success. The joy Fang Yuan felt was hard to describe. Although he could use the light of wisdom, it would be extremely difficult to deduce familiar face. His wisdom path attainment was Grandmaster level, but his transformation path attainment was merely at Master level. And the familiar series were transformation path killer moves. Even if I could deduce it, it won't be the same. But now what I have is the original familiar face, which contains its full contents without any flaws. Fang Yuan had no mood to keep staying, and left immediately. He returned to Hu Immortal Blessed Land, and started to carefully study the Immortal Killer move. There was only one core of familiar face, that was the rank 8 Attitude Gu. This move fully utilized the might of Attitude Gu. One could say Attitude Gu was the essence of this move, and without it, no matter which other Immortal Gu was added, it would be hard to display the profound capability of familiar face. Besides Attitude Gu, familiar face had over 20 supplementary Gu. Among them were 2 Immortal Gu, including Change Form Immortal Gu. Fang Yuan had failed in refining Change Form, while he did not even have the Immortal Gu recipe of the second Immortal Gu. This was the only blemish in this otherwise perfect matter. It seems that in the past, when Thieving Heaven Demon Venerable was at rank 6, he possessed these 2 supplementary Immortal Gu. Shortly afterwards, Fang Yuan entered the underground cavern and used the light of wisdom, continuously consuming large amounts of star thoughts as he began modifying the Immortal Killer move familiar face. Several days later, he succeeded. The 2 supplementary Immortal Gu were removed, about 1,000 Mortal Gu were added in, barely replacing the effect of the 2 Immortal Gu. With this, the activation of Fang Yuan's modified familiar face was over 10 times slower and more complicated. The original familiar face only had over 20 Gu worms, even including Attitude Gu, it did not reach 30. The fewer the Gu worms, the simpler and faster the process of activation. After Fang Yuan's modification, the number of Gu worms was over 1,000, their activation naturally was not as fast and convenient as the original. This was something he had no other way to deal with. Fang Yuan tried activating the modified familiar face. The result of the test made him quite satisfied. The modified familiar face could show 60% of the original's capability. The 2 supplementary Immortal Gu had been replaced with 1,000 Mortal Gu, being able to reach this point was already extremely exceptional. It was just that the activation was very slow and required about an hour. This was not of much importance, after all, familiar face was not used for battle. In my previous life, I refined Change Form Immortal Gu and used it as the core to form the modified vaguely familiar face. Now, I have this modified familiar face where the effect is over 100 times better. I can completely deceive rank 7 Gu Immortals, while the specific situation needs to be assessed for rank 8 Gu Immortals. Fang Yuan inwardly calculated. The killer move familiar face was exquisite beyond compare, especially the Attitude Gu at its core, causing Fang Yuan's transformation to not be a transformation of surface appearance, but directly affecting others' minds. Even if Fang Yuan transformed into a stranger, if the enemy was affected by this move, they would feel Fang Yuan was a long-lost friend, or have a warm impression, or feel intense familiarity. After gaining familiar face, Fang Yuan spent some time to practice every day. Although Attitude Gu was at rank 8, its requirements for activation were very low, only using up mental energy, not using up any immortal essence. Thus, Fang Yuan's practice did not cost much. As he became more accustomed, the time taken to activate familiar face reduced to half of the original 1 hour. The preparations are done. Now, I will have to wait for Tai Bai Yun Xing's tribulation. Fang Yuan settled down, staying in Hu Immortal Blessed Land and occasionally traveling back and forth from that small village which had the Spring Dream Fruit Tree. He continuously refined Dream Path Mortal Gu, and used these Gu to pick up large numbers of Spring Dream Fruits. As time passed, his injuries gradually turned better, and finally it was the day of Tai Bai Yun Xing's tribulation. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 977, Slavery Immortal Gu. Chapter 977, Slavery Immortal Gu. Translator. Atlas Studios. Editor. Atlas Studios. In a green heaven fragment world within Western Desert. The sky was green, the wind that would not stop in all 4 seasons was blowing gently. A pure white and vast city was stably floating in the air, letting out faint golden radiance. At present, humans were the rulers of the world. The variant human races, who once were dominant, were already hiding in corners of the world, surviving with difficulty. And this green heaven fragment world was the paradise for a group of one of the races of variant humans, the Feathermen. Immortal Gu House Sacred Feather City was the strongest headquarters of these Featherman descendants. Right now, rainbow flags were hanging in Sacred Feather City, cheers and shouts could be heard everywhere. All the Feathermen were calling the same name. Yu Fei. Yu Fei. Yu Fei. The Featherman King had passed away. According to their customs, it was time to select the new Featherman King through battles. And just a while ago, the battle had concluded. The most popular candidate, the Featherman Prince Anew, had actually lost. While the ordinary citizen, the black-haired youngster Yu Fei, had obtained the final victory. I, Yu Fei, have finally realized my life's dream. I have become the Featherman King. Yu Fei was severely injured, but it did not bother him, as he raised his head and laughed heartily. He stretched his arms as well as his wings, enjoying everyone's cheers. He grinned from ear to ear, and his mouth was opened wide, revealing his gums. This new Featherman King is quite unique, he is quite different from the other kings. He is an interesting fellow. It seems that he has quite the ambition, he wants to expand the territory of us Feathermen. But after he becomes the Featherman King, he should become more mature. Behind the scenes, 3 Featherman Gu immortals were communicating with each other, wearing smiles on their faces. But right at this moment, a powerful attack suddenly hit this peaceful city. Boom! The enormous explosion shook the entirety of Sacred Feather City. Painful, painful, painful. Yu Fei was caught off guard, he lost his balance and crashed onto the ground, rolling around in the process. Quickly look, this is. The Feathermen at the front saw something amiss, they pointed at the sky and stammered in fear, they could not speak. Immediately after, most of the Feathermen raised their heads, they were shocked to find out that above them, in the green sky, there was a huge crack. From the crack, several figures descended like demonic gods. The 3 Featherman Gu immortals in Sacred Feather City had already reacted, they were startled to awareness as they flew towards the sky. They appeared to face the invading enemies while shouting to their Featherman citizens. Be careful, there is a strong enemy attacking. Quick, sound the alarms, defend our homeland. Gu Masters assemble, go to the formation cores and activate the defenses of Sacred Feather City. The entire city was in chaos, fear was spreading. Sacred Feather City had been peaceful for too long, they had no competition with the outside world, it was like life inside a utopia. This caused their defenses to be very lax, and with the crowning of a new king, the non-militarized Feathermen could not respond properly. The enemy had come in with such momentum, the 3 Featherman Gu immortals were grim-faced, but they held a hope as they tried to negotiate peacefully. But the command from the enemy's leader, Xianxia, destroyed the 3 Featherman Gu immortals' hopes. This old Gu immortal's eyes were extremely apathetic, as he commanded, attack. The 3 Featherman Gu immortals were no match for them, and could only retreat to the Immortal Gu House Sacred Feather City and defend. Sacred Feather City was besieged from all directions by the Western Desert's immortals, battlefield killer moves followed one after the other, as they covered the whole area. Countless mortal killer moves and immortal killer moves impacted the Immortal Gu House, creating grand fireworks. Xianxia had clearly come prepared, as his methods immobilized Sacred Feather City. Sacred Feather City seemed like it had sunk into a mire, it would be difficult for it to get free in a short period of time. The Feathermen had lived in peace for a very long time, and now they were suddenly thrusted into a life and death battle. They were not able to cope in time. The three immortals were also the same, thus losing the best chance to escape. 2 days later. Boom! A bolt of lightning shot out and struck a section of the wall of Sacred Feather City. The city wall immediately crumbled, and shortly dispersed into countless goo worm fragments. None of the Featherman Gu masters defending the city wall were able to escape, their dead bodies covered the ground. Dust clouds rose, from within, a slight trace of green light suddenly flashed. Damn it! The battle had already lasted for 2 days and 2 days, the Featherman Gu immortal Zhou Zhong's eyes were bloodshot. He saw the destroyed city wall, their defense had a flaw now, thus he immediately flew to guard it. Immortal Gu houses were essentially formed from countless Gu worms. This destroyed city wall meant all the Gu worms in it had died, and it was like a hole had been opened in the Immortal Gu house. This was like a boat with holes, its defense had reduced by a large extent. If the enemies pierced through it and took the chance to enlarge this hole, the whole Immortal Gu house could be destroyed in the end. Right now, although the hole was small, it absolutely could not be ignored and allowed to be enlarged. Zhou Zhong quickly hurried to block the hole, buying crucial time for the Immortal Gu house's self-recovery. However, just when Zhou Zhong had arrived, he heard a sinister laugh. He, you have fallen into the trap. Suddenly, 2 figures appeared at his sides, flanking him in the middle. The portion of the Sacred Feather City that had collapsed had already formed a gap which allowed the 2 Gu immortals to enter. Scoundrels! Zhou Zhong was extremely furious and panicked as he counterattacked. But he had lost the initiative, and after several rounds, he was severely injured and on the verge of death. Bind! From outside the city, a Western Desert Gu immortal got close and suddenly activated his immortal killer move. Instantly, Zhou Zhong could not budge an inch, like he was bound all over. The 2 Gu immortals beside him laughed sinisterly, as they struck Zhou Zhong's chest. Zhou Zhong spat out huge amounts of blood and was sent flying back like a cannon, crashing through countless constructions on the way before finally laying down motionless on a pile of rubble. His body shook slightly as he struggled with all his strength. However, the killer move's effect was still there, making him unable to move. Those 2 Gu immortals came rushing over. Zhou Zhong could not help but feel despair. Zhou Zhong, hold on, I am coming. At the crucial moment, a stalwart figure stood in front of Zhou Zhong. The strongest expert in the Featherman City, First Supreme Elder. Even by collaborating, the 2 Western Desert Gu immortals were unable to match the First Supreme Elder's strength. This Supreme Elder's cultivation level was almost at the peak of rank 7. Right now, as he attacked in anger, his might burst out, it was overwhelming. The 2 Western Desert's Gu immortals were unable to attack back, and were soon injured heavily. They quickly retreated back to the hole. The final Featherman Gu immortal, Xianxia, was controlling the Immortal Gu house to quickly repair the hole as quickly as possible. The hole was already 80% restored and was getting increasingly smaller. The 2 Western Desert Gu immortals hurried to the hole in the Immortal Gu house, but were unable to escape. They would have to stay and enlarge the hole slightly. However, at this critical juncture, every second was extremely important. The Western Desert Gu immortals simply did not have the time to attack the hole. Xianxia, great work. The Featherman First Supreme Elder was joyous. Right now, the Immortal Gu house was continuously being repaired, and the situation had already become such that the enemies were trapped inside, waiting to be attacked. Once they kill these 2 Western Desert Gu immortals, the Featherman tribe's morale would surely be uplifted greatly. The enemies would be shaken and no one would dare to rashly charge into the Immortal Gu house anymore. But right as the Featherman First Supreme Elder was about to kill the 2 Western Desert Gu immortals, a shocking change occurred. The 2 Western Desert Gu immortals no longer had panicked expressions, instead replaced by a smile, as if they had a plot which succeeded. At the same time, 4 Western Desert Gu immortals appeared beside the Featherman First Supreme Elder. Our true target is you. You will die. The leading Gu immortal was actually White Sea Shatuo. At this moment, his aura erupted and surged, and overwhelming might burst out, revealing rank 8 cultivation level. The Featherman First Supreme Elder paled in fear. The moment of carelessness had sent him into a dangerous situation. Damn it! The rank 7 Featherman Gu Immortal Xianxia, who was controlling the Immortal Gu House, was extremely anxious, activating the Immortal Gu House quickly. Both sides were focused in this peripheral area of the Immortal Gu House, this crucial battlefield. Old Ancestor, are you alright? Yu Fei shouted as he moved towards the Featherman Gu Immortal Zhou Zhong, who was lying on the ground motionlessly. Zhou Zhong was struck by the Immortal Killer move and its effect had yet to dissipate, thus he was still unable to move from the rubble. The newly crowned Featherman King. Zhou Zhong sighed as he looked at Yu Fei. He transmitted his voice, leave quickly, the battle here is not something you can participate in. But Yu Fei ignored it, flying towards Zhou Zhong's side and activating Mortal Gu, Old Ancestor, I will save you. Zhou Zhong appreciated Yu Fei's bravery, feeling moved, but also helplessness. There were countless injuries on his body, all inflicted by immortal killer moves. The injuries were filled with Dao marks. How could they be healed by ordinary Mortal Gu? Ha! But the next moment, Zhou Zhong's eyes protruded out, as he stared at Yu Fei. You are not Yu Fei, you. Zhou Zhong tried to cry out furiously, wanting to resist, but he could not budge. Before he could even alarm others, Fang Yuan had sealed his voice. The moment when there was a gap in the Immortal Gu House, Fang Yuan had used fixed immortal travel to travel here from northern plains. The Immortal Gu House's control near the hole had fallen to almost nil. Fang Yuan was thus not detected by anyone. He then waited for a chance, and taking advantage of when the two sides were in an intense battle, with their attention focused on the key battlefield, he immediately made a move, disguising himself as Yu Fei, and was able to smoothly approach Zhou Zhong. Right now, he was silently activating Slavery Immortal Gu. Zhou Zhong resisted intensely, his resistance kept on increasing. But after a while, all his resistance suddenly disappeared, as he was turned into Fang Yuan's slave. In an instant, he turned to Fang Yuan's side. I finally succeeded. Fang Yuan was completely exhausted. Shortly after, he gave a command to Zhou Zhong, go replace Xianxia to take control of the entirety of Sacred Feather City. Yes, Master. Zhou Zhong moved his heavily injured body, flying towards the center of Sacred Feather City. Elder Xianxia, go reinforce First Supreme Elder. I will control the Immortal Gu House. Zhou Zhong called out. Xianxia was joyous. The Featherman First Supreme Elder's situation was already extremely bad. Although he was controlling the Immortal Gu House, the entirety of Sacred Feather City was already immobilized by the enemy. As such, it was not able to display its true power. Instead of using Sacred Feather City's power, it was better for him to go in person to reinforce the First Supreme Elder. Are your injuries okay? Xianxia was about to move, but hesitated. Quickly go. At this point, even if I die, I will guard the Immortal Gu House. Zhou Zhong shouted, his whole body bathed in blood. Alright, I am leaving. Hang in there. Xianxia nodded, and turned into a bolt of lightning as he left. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 978, Subduing the Feathermen. Chapter 978, Subduing the Feathermen. Translator. Atlas Studios. Editor. Atlas Studios. Bam bam bam. Continuous explosions resounded like thunder. Every explosion shook the whole of Sacred Feather City. Fang Yuan was standing within ruins, hiding inside the rolling dust and dirt as the entirety of Sacred Feather City shook. Enslaving a Gu immortal is indeed countless times more difficult than enslaving beast groups. Fang Yuan felt the pressure on his soul. Enslaving other life forms created a burden on the Gu master. Back in Northern Plains, during the contest for the Imperial Court, Fang Yuan had commanded tens of thousands of beasts, but it was not that he had enslaved all of them, rather, through enslaving myriad beast kings, 1,000 beast kings and 100 beast kings, he had been indirectly controlling the whole beast army. Man is the spirit of all living beings. Beasts did not have much intelligence, so Fang Yuan was able to enslave a lot of them. However, Zhou Zhong was completely different. Zhou Zhong had deep wisdom and intelligence. Although enslaving him did not fail, it created an extremely huge burden on Fang Yuan's soul. After all, Zhou Zhong was a Gu immortal. Rank 6 slavery immortal Gu could only enslave a rank 6 Gu immortal. It is also because Zhou Zhong is a featherman and not a human. His intelligence is inferior just by a bit. If I were to enslave a human Gu immortal, I might have failed. I had cultivated soul path previously and have some foundation in regards to my soul. But this is only at the limits of mortal levels, and my foundation in it as a Gu immortal is quite shallow. By enslaving Zhou Zhong, my soul has become heavily burdened. If my soul was like an energetic youth before, now I have turned into an old man with a heavy load on my back. With such a sharp reduction in strength, it would be good if I can display 20% of my ability. Fang Yuan sighed inwardly. All the paths of Gu were broad and profound. So too was enslavement path. At Gu immortal level, there were extraordinary abilities that laymen could not grasp. Simply put, Fang Yuan was a layman in enslavement path. He did not know of any enslavement path immortal killer moves. If he had, then in combination with slavery immortal Gu, his current situation might have been much better. He was only able to use the slavery immortal Gu superficially. But with his previous lives' experiences, along with the help of the light of wisdom to deduce the plans, he was able to achieve a huge success. Master, I have received control over Sacred Feather City. Zhengling has already moved towards the battle to support the first Supreme Elder. Zhou Zhong's voice suddenly resounded in Fang Yuan's ears. Fang Yuan excitedly licked his lips, clenching his fists subconsciously. He sent a command: first, kill the real Yufei. He now had Yufei's appearance. The real Yufei was his greatest flaw. Shortly afterwards, Zhou Zhong's voice arrived again: Yufei is dead, turned into ashes. At present, Zhou Zhong was the only one controlling Sacred Feather City alone. As such, this was accomplished easily. Good, do all you can to control the immortal Gu house and get away from the battle. Fang Yuan sent another command. This time, it took a good while before Zhou Zhong's weak voice arrived. Forgive me, Master, I was not able to do it. The whole immortal Gu house is already locked in place by the enemies. Fang Yuan snorted, a ferocious light flashing in his eyes. So it is still like this. He did not feel much disappointment. In his previous life, he had laid a trap which caused all the Feathermen to suicide, and he was only able to obtain Featherman Gu immortal Zhengling's soul. Zhengling had personally participated in the battle to defend Sacred Feather City, and not much time had passed, thus his memories were extremely clear. His soul was not like Xuesong Zi's, which had been tampered with by a soul path expert. Fang Yuan could easily search his soul and obtain all his memories. It was these memories that let Fang Yuan feel like he had personally experienced the battle to defend Sacred Feather City. Thus, his timing was so precise, he could infiltrate the immortal Gu house and take the opportunity when the two sides were in an intense battle to successfully enslave Gu immortal Zhou Zhong. There were a lot of opportunities like this, but the best one was this. Zhou Zhong just happened to be restricted by an immortal killer move and was not able to budge, providing huge convenience to Fang Yuan. From Zhengling's soul, Fang Yuan also knew this immortal Gu house, Sacred Feather City, was locked down by the enemies and was unable to be moved. However, a person like Fang Yuan would absolutely not be reconciled to this. They would personally attempt it. The attempt indeed failed and he was unable to steal this Sacred Feather City. Fang Yuan could only choose the second best option, observing from the sidelines and letting the events continue to develop. Similarly to his previous life, Zhou Zhong carried his heavily injured body and controlled the immortal Gu house with difficulty, freeing Zhengling from the duty. Zhengling hurried to reinforce the first Supreme Elder and had a huge fight with White Sea Shatua and the rest. This huge fight was the most crucial fight of the battle to defend Sacred Feather City. The outcome of the fight was the same as Fang Yuan's previous life. White Sea Shatua and the rest were beaten back, and escaped through the gap in the wall. The first Supreme Elder was heavily injured and was on the verge of death after being targeted by the combined strength of the Western Desert Gu immortals. As for Xingling, his situation was slightly better. The battle ended, the immortal Gu house was restored and there was no gaps anymore, its defense becoming perfect. However, the Featherman First Supreme Elder's injuries could not be healed and he died within the city. After losing their greatest battle strength, the two Featherman Gu immortals held on for a night, and seeing that nothing could be done, they resolutely decided to give up on the immortal Gu house and leave this place. All the Feathermen gathered together and activated the immortal killer move Heavenly Wish. I wish, my clan's Feathermen, survive. I wish, my clan's Feathermen, gain freedom. I wish, my clan's Feathermen, have a place to live in the world. The Western Desert Gu immortals observed from the sidelines, letting the Feathermen leave. Once the Feathermen left, they could obtain the entire immortal Gu house Sacred Feather City. It was the first time Fang Yuan experienced this heavenly wish. He felt a majestic and powerful white light engulfing him along with the rest of the Feathermen, and transporting them through a white tunnel. He felt he was like a piece of wood dropped into a rapid whirlpool, as he was sent revolving round and round. After about 5 minutes, the surrounding white light suddenly disappeared and Fang Yuan found his footing once again. He was feeling extremely dizzy and almost fell to the ground. The surrounding mortal Feathermen were already sprawled on the ground. Only the two Featherman Gu immortals, Xingling and Zhou Zhong, were vigilantly standing. Fang Yuan inwardly shook his head at this. It seems that after enslaving Zhou Zhong, my own battle strength is not worth any expectations. Where is this place? The Featherman Gu immortal Zhou Zhong scanned his surroundings. Xingling's expression changed rapidly. Not good. This is a human Gu immortal's blessed land. We were treated as an earthly calamity and transported here. With Tai Bai Yunsheng at the lead, He Lulan and Fairy Lishan slowly flew towards the Feathermen. In his previous life, Fang Yuan helped Tai Bai Yunsheng to pass the tribulation and did not invite them. But this life, Fang Yuan wanted to use this earthly calamity to intimidate them, so he invited them to help. Tai Bai Yunsheng was expressionless, feeling both shocked and joyous internally. Fang Yuan looked for me to tell me he could deduce this calamity and told me what to do. I did not dare to believe him then, but now it seems everything is just like what he said. I can definitely pass this earthly calamity. He Lulan and Fairy Lishan were both inwardly shocked. Having a Featherman calamity was rare and peculiar. But Fang Yuan had actually accurately predicted it. What did this mean? One of the reasons it was difficult to pass heavenly tribulations and earthly calamities was that they could not be predicted. Fang Yuan now had this ability, which was simply like a divine weapon to pass tribulations. As long as they made specific preparations before the tribulation, the probability of successfully passing the tribulation would be raised by a terrifying degree. The Featherman Gu immortal Xingling's heart sank to rock bottom. In his previous life, when he had seen Fang Yuan and Tai Bai Yunsheng, he had a feeling of contempt. But now, the rank 7 Fairy Lishan, He Lulan with the great strength true martial physique and Tai Bai Yunsheng arrived together, especially the unconcealed aura of immortal Gu on them, they involuntarily brought huge mental pressure on Xingling. There was nothing much to say after that. With Tai Bai Yunsheng displaying the ability of landscape as before immortal Gu, the Featherman Gu immortal's threat towards Tai Bai Yunsheng's immortal aperture had become non-existent. In his previous life, just with Fang Yuan and Tai Bai Yunsheng, these Feathermen had been duped over and over. This time, not only was there He Lulan and Fairy Lishan, Zhou Zhong and Yu Fei were also hidden traitors. After a duel, Xingling was once again killed, but Tai Bai Yunsheng and the others did not force the remaining Feathermen. This was a mistake Fang Yuan had made last time. This time, he would not make it again. These Feathermen were different from those Feathermen sold in the markets. They lived in the immemorial Green Heaven fragment world, living on for generations in isolation from the rest of the world. They had the nature of the ancient Feathermen, they would rather suicide than lose their freedom. Thus, Tai Bai Yunsheng did not restrict them, instead negotiating with them deceptively. Under the lead of Zhou Zhong and Yu Fei, the Feathermen moved to star-form Blessed Land. With these Feathermen, Fang Yuan's development in Western Desert could reach a new stage, and his prospects were bright. This was not his only harvest. After the event, He Lulan indirectly asked him regarding the prediction of the calamity. Fang Yuan intentionally gave a bitter smile, asking back, "You think I have such an ability? Don't forget, Purple Mountain True Monarch is my master." At the same time, Tai Bai Yunsheng is also his disciple. He Lulan thought, so it was indeed like this ability is too powerful, it is not something Fang Yuan can possess, so it was Purple Mountain True Monarch. Unconsciously, He Lulan and Fairy Li Shan's apprehension towards Purple Mountain True Monarch deepened further. Fang Yuan was able to deal a heavy blow to them, this would be greatly beneficial to him in restricting Blazing Heaven Demonis in the future. It was only that after he enslaved Zhou Zhong, his soul's burden had become very heavy, and there was much difficulty in even refining Dream Path Mortal Gu. This intensified Fang Yuan's desire towards Luopa Valley. Luopa Valley and Dang Hun Mountain, if he had both of them, then even if he was a layman in Soul Path, the foundation of his soul would increase rapidly. However, right now, it was still not the time to go to Luopa Valley. In his previous life, He Cheng's soul had ended up in He Lulan's hands, much of the information obtained through soul searching had been shared with Fang Yuan as well. Fang Yuan knew that currently, Luopa Valley had been remodeled into a secret stronghold by Shadow Sect, with large numbers of Gu formations arranged everywhere. Even in his previous life, when Feng Jiugu and the other Central Continent Gu immortals had attacked Luopa Valley when no one was around, these Gu formations were able to hold them off until Qin Baisheng and the rest arrived. Right now, Luopa Valley was filled with Shadow Sect's members, it was much more terrifying than a dragon's den. Fang Yuan needed to wait for the appropriate time. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know in the report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 979, Going with the Flow. Chapter 979, Going with the Flow. Translator. Atlas Studios. Editor. Atlas Studios. Fang Yuan had a lot of patience. After helping Tai Bai Yunsheng pass the tribulation, Fang Yuan refined Dream Path Mortal Gu while collecting the Spring Dream fruits, along with expanding his Guts Gu and Eerie Fire Dragon Python trades. Soon, his monthly profits greatly exceeded his previous life, it was over 2,000. There were many reasons for this. Firstly, Fang Yuan had to spend a lot of time in investigating and gathering information before deciding on suitable trade partners in his previous life. Especially in Western Desert. But now, with his experience, Fang Yuan could easily contact the buyer and save a lot of time and effort, causing his profits to come much earlier than before. Secondly, the hairy men in the Fang Yuan stone nests were now free to refine Guts Gu. This was different from last time, when they were still refining Star Thought Gu and other Gu worms that did not provide income. Thirdly, Fang Yuan did not have any plans to relocate Star Form Blessed Land, he had already made a new alliance agreement with He Lulan and the others. He might need to relocate it in the future, but it was not an urgent matter now. Fourthly, with the Feathermen forming caravans and dealing with transactions for him, Fang Yuan obtained much benefits in Western Desert quickly. The use of the Feathermen was starting to show. But Fang Yuan was still experimenting for now, he did not send out all of these tens of thousands of Feathermen. In this aspect, he had a long-term plan, he wanted to use these current Feathermen to increase the population of Feathermen, he might be able to implement slave trade of Feathermen in the future. In terms of slave trade, even though Feathermen were inferior to hairy men, they were much better than rock men. Especially in Western Desert forces, they sacrificed a large number of Feathermen yearly, the demand for Featherman slaves was always high and unceasing. Fang Yuan developed patiently, while he accumulated immortal essence stones, he did not forget to accumulate Gu refinement immortal materials. Time passed quickly, Langya Blessed Land was attacked by strong foes once again. Langya Land's spirit knew that the enemy was powerful, he had to seek help, sending emergency support letters to Fang Yuan and Tai Bai Yunsheng. In this life, Fang Yuan had planned meticulously, Tai Bai Yunsheng's immortal aperture did not suffer much losses. After receiving the letters, the two of them went to Langya Blessed Land. In Langya Blessed Land, there was a thick fog of clouds that shrouded everyone's vision. They could not see anything, not the sky, the ground, or even their own fingers. This is the 12-wave cloud confusion formation. Langya Land Spirit explained in a deep and low tone, and these are the invaders. The Land Spirit waved his sleeves, as several images appeared in front of Fang Yuan and Tai Bai Yunsheng. Qin Bai Sheng, Jiang Yu, He Cheng, Shui Song Zi, He Lang Zi, and Hui Feng Zi, as well as the blazing glory lightning brilliance immortal zombie, they were all present. It's them. Fang Yuan pretended to be surprised. You recognize these people? Langya Land Spirit quickly asked. Fang Yuan nodded with a serious expression. These people are extremely strong. The leader, Qin Bai Sheng, might only have rank 7 cultivation level, but he can fight with a rank 8 Gu immortal. Langya Land Spirit was shocked, so powerful. Fang Yuan pointed at the others. This is Fairy Jiang Yu, she has Dark Limit Immortal Gu. This is the Supreme Elder handling public affairs of a super force in Northern Plains, He Tribe's He Cheng, he has an Immortal Gu house in his possession. There is also Shui Song Zi, he might be only rank 6, but he is a member of Snowy Mountain Blessed Land, he is backed by the rank 8 Old Ancestor Shui Hu. And this He Lang Zi, he is a transformation path Gu immortal with high battle strength. In the past, he rejected a recruitment offer by Old Ancestor Shui Hu. This is Hui Feng Zi, a wind path expert, his wind path attainment level is very deep, he is the publicly recognized fastest person in Northern Plains Gu immortal world, he had once escaped from many rank 8 Gu immortals. As Fang Yuan spoke, Langya Land Spirit's expression turned grimmer and grimmer. When Fang Yuan finished his words, Langya Land Spirit's expression was extremely grave, he pointed at the mysterious black-robed Gu immortal, to think that the enemies are so powerful. Then who in the world is this Gu immortal? Fang Yuan knew who he was, of course, but at this moment, he pretended to show a confused and suspicious expression. He hesitated before saying, this person is covering his face and has an immortal killer move protecting him, he is very mysterious. Let me make a deduction. Saying so, he pinched his fingers and deduced, his body was covered in starlight as immortal Gu aura surged around him, as if he was working hard. Seeing this, Langya Land Spirit was deceived, he thought, even though I had approached Fang Yuan many times in the past and asked him to deduce immortal Gu recipes for me, this is the first time I am seeing him make a deduction. I do not know what immortal Gu he is using, but looking at this, his wisdom path attainment level is not low. The starlight on Fang Yuan's body faded gradually, his expression was grim as his eyes shined brightly. My goodness, this mysterious Gu immortal is extremely special, he is an immortal zombie, and one of the 10 extreme physiques, blazing glory lightning brilliance physique. You deduced it so quickly. Langya Land Spirit was surprised. Beside him, Tai Bai Yunsheng chuckled, that is only natural. Fang Yuan is a Wisdom Path Grandmaster. Wisdom Path Grandmaster. Langya Land Spirit was shocked, he assessed Fang Yuan again, looking at him in a different light. Fang Yuan's expression was calm, his voice was heavy as he spoke to Langya Land Spirit, the enemy is so powerful, we are in danger now. Langya Land Spirit chuckled, no need to worry, as long as we persevere for a period of time, I can capture any Gu immortal no matter how strong they are. Oh. Fang Yuan's eyebrows rose, he probed Langya Land Spirit while pretending to be curious, it seems you still have additional assistants. Langya Land Spirit smiled with a smug expression, he did not want to say much, but he changed his mind suddenly and probed Fang Yuan instead, you are a Wisdom Path Grandmaster at such a young age? Honestly speaking, I am quite surprised. Why don't you deduce where my confidence lies in dealing with the enemies? Fang Yuan naturally knew that Langya Land Spirit's confidence was in the rank 8 Immortal Gu House Refinement Cauldron. But afterwards, he pretended to deduce and acted like he was met with difficulty. Eventually, he admitted his failure, I cannot deduce it, honestly speaking, in the past, I have tried to deduce Langya Blessed Land, but I had no gains. Now is no exception. Ha ha ha. Langya Land Spirit laughed loudly, he patted Fang Yuan's shoulder proudly, but did not say much. An immortal Gu house could attack and defend, so could the rank 8 Refinement Cauldron. Defensive methods were not just against attacks, they could also defend against the deductions of others. Fang Yuan pretended to fail, this was within Langya Land Spirit's expectations. From his point of view, this was natural. No matter how outstanding Fang Yuan was, he only had rank 6 cultivation level. No matter how mystical his Immortal Gu were, they could not match the rank 8 Immortal Gu House, Refinement Cauldron. It is normal for me to fail in deducing it. If I succeed, it would cause Langya Land Spirit to become very wary. Fang Yuan smiled coldly internally. Land Spirit were obsessed and pure, but that did not mean they were stupid. Especially when Langya Land Spirit's original form was Long-Hair Ancestor, this legendary person had a good friend when he was alive, Immortal Yi Yen, a wisdom path Gu immortal that created the prophecy of 3 venerables. He was also a famous person throughout history. Thus, Langya Land Spirit was clear about the capabilities of a wisdom path Gu immortal to a great extent. If Fang Yuan deduced something, it was evidently out of the scope of ability that a rank 6 Gu immortal had. This would cause Langya Land Spirit to become very wary and suspicious. He would think, how could Fang Yuan alone deduce anything? Evidently, he has someone behind him. And this great expert is very powerful, he can breach the defense of my Refinement Cauldron and deduce my arrangements in the Blessed Land. Once he thought of that, Langya Land Spirit would be very vigilant, he would be on guard against Fang Yuan. After all, Langya Land Spirit was the obsession of Long-Hair Ancestor. And Long-Hair Ancestor was a hairy man. Towards humans and other variant humans, he had deep wariness. This could be shown from the transformation in personality and manner of speech in Langya Land Spirit in Fang Yuan's previous life. The reason why Fang Yuan could get close to Langya Land Spirit was mainly because he had obtained a certain inheritance of Thieving Heaven Demon Venerable. Because of his agreement with Thieving Heaven Demon Venerable, Langya Land Spirit had to help Fang Yuan refine Gu 3 times. If not for that, how could Fang Yuan, as a human, get so close to Langya Land Spirit? Even though Fang Yuan had to refine Star Thought Immortal Gu and All-Out Effort Immortal Gu, all along, he did not want to waste this final opportunity to refine Gu. That was because he wanted to remain close to Langya Land Spirit. Langya Land Spirit had lived countless years in this blessed land. His interactions with the outside world, other than the transactions inside Treasure Yellow Heaven, were limited to only Mo Tan Sang. He understood that great wealth would attract the greed of others, thus he had been keeping a low profile. At the same time, he had a natural form of distrust towards other individuals. Fang Yuan was not strong back then, thus Langya Land Spirit was not too wary or suspicious of him, but now that he was starting to show extraordinary abilities, Langya Land Spirit would naturally be alert and uneasy. How can an outsider be allowed to sleep beside his bed? In the past, Fang Yuan was a white rabbit, but the Fang Yuan who displayed Wisdom Path Grandmaster attainment was considered a poisonous snake. Matters developed just like in his previous life. Fang Yuan was arranged to guard a cloud building by Langya Land Spirit. But before that, Fang Yuan suggested that they should allow He Lulan and Fairy Li Shan to join the battle. Tai Bai Yun Xing gave his assurance as well. But Langya Land Spirit rejected them. Fang Yuan used a different method to deal with Xue Song Zi this time. He did not sneak attack Xue Song Zi, instead, he fought him openly. Even though it was a more impressive fight, the result was less of a victory. Fang Yuan only fought with Xue Song Zi for a while before Shadow Sect's reinforcements came, and Fang Yuan took the initiative to retreat. There was no benefit in killing Xue Song Zi. He had Immortal Gu and Lifespan Gu, but they could not be taken. He might as well let him go, so that he could deal with the Central Continent Gu Immortals next. Fang Yuan had thought of reminding Langya Land Spirit and making arrangements earlier, so that Refinement Cauldron could take down the group from Shadow Sect in advance, but after considering it thoroughly, Fang Yuan rejected this idea. First, there was a great risk in dealing with Shadow Sect. Qin Baisheng was very powerful, Fang Yuan had no confidence against him. Shadow Sect and Zombie Alliance also had some kind of secret connection, there was more than met the eye. Second, even if Shadow Sect was dealt with, Fang Yuan's gains would not be ideal. Refinement Cauldron would hold the biggest use, if they won, Langya Land Spirit would gain most of the loot. Shadow Sect's base, Luo Valley, would end up in the hands of the Central Continent Gu immortals. Fang Yuan would get nothing. Third, Fang Yuan needed the Northern Plains Shadow Sect members to resist the Central Continent Gu immortals. Even though he did not know how the Central Continent Gu immortals found Shadow Sect while investigating Fang Yuan, this was something he wanted to see. If Shadow Sect was eliminated, Central Continent would have no obstacles. If they found Fang Yuan, what would he do? Finally, Fang Yuan could guess that the mastermind behind the Battle of Tian Mountain was Shadow Sect because of the Blazing Glory Lightning Brilliance zombie. If they were killed, the influence would be huge. During the Battle of Tian Mountain, unexpected mishaps would occur. With many mishaps, Fang Yuan's plans would be disrupted, his preparations would be in vain. Thus, Fang Yuan decided to go with the flow for the battle to defend Xianxia Blessed Land. Altering the result of this battle not only carried big risks, the disadvantages outweighed the advantages. A wise person would not do this. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 980, Joining Xianxia Sect. Chapter 980, Joining Xianxia Sect. Translator. Atlas Studios. Editor. Atlas Studios. Damn it, it had to be at this time. Qin Baixing clenched his fists, looking at the battlefield in front of him. He was filled with discontent and reluctance. Retreat. A moment later, he sighed as he ordered. Why are we retreating? Fairy Xianxia was shocked. Luo Valley is being attacked. It's the Central Continent Gu immortals who are investigating the collapse of 88 True Yang Building. Qin Baixing transmitted. How could their investigation lead to us? Unless, Heaven's will. Fairy Xiangxia's body shuddered. Heaven's will is vast and grand, that is likely the case. But our action earlier caused too much of a commotion. While making preparations for our ultimate plan, Heaven's will obstructed us. Later, on Tian Mountain, I wonder how terrifying Heaven's will's obstruction will be. Qin Baixing sighed. The two conversed at lightning speed. They transmitted their words to each other. No one else heard them. Soon, Qin Baixing ordered the Shadow Sect members to retreat from Xianxia Blessed Land. They have retreated. Tai Bai Yunxing let out a breath. Damn it! He escaped again. He Lulan clenched her fists, gritting her teeth. Fairy Li Shan was silent. She was deeply frowning, her expression of worry. The hairy man Gu immortals first cheered before feeling great sorrow. In this battle, they had made a bloody sacrifice, and even found traitors. Life was hard to predict. With the sad state of life and death in front of them, these hairy man Gu immortals who normally only thought of refining Gu were greatly incited. Xianxia Land's spirit dismantled the ancient battle formation Heavenly Giant Solar. His eyes were bright red. He looked at the direction where Qin Baixing and the others were leaving harshly. These people really think us hairy men are easy to bully. I will return today's humiliation with bloodshed one day in the future. In this battle, because Fang Yuan did not do much, it was quite similar to his previous life. First, Fang Yuan and the others defended the mortal Gu House cloud buildings, but they were destroyed by Shadow Sect easily, breaking the 12-wave cloud confusion formation. Once again, the Inkman Gu immortal was killed by Qin Baixing rapidly, losing his life. Xianxia Land's spirit's plan to stall for time was severely disrupted. He had no way out and was pacing around anxiously. In his previous life, during this crucial moment, the land's spirit transformed. But now, during this period, Fang Yuan gave a suggestion and advised Xianxia Land's spirit to use an ancient battle formation. When Xianxia Land's spirit was desperate and at his wit's end, he heard this suggestion and quickly used it. Ancient battle formations were quite different from the currently mainstream battlefield killer moves. The Dao marks in an ancient battle formation were much less harmful to the Blessed Land than battlefield killer moves. Xianxia Land's spirit was desperate. He could only use Heavenly Giant Solar. At this moment, Fang Yuan suggested again, just the few of us, how can we resist them? We need more people. But Xianxia Land's spirit was hesitant. He had more than 10 hairy man Gu immortals, but they were hidden and manipulating the rank 8 immortal Gu House refinement cauldron. Especially when he somewhat sensed that there were traitors among them. Fang Yuan had anticipated Langya Land Spirit's response. He suggested that he had reliable aid. Langya Land Spirit frowned immediately. He was very wary of outsiders. The less people who knew about the blessed land, the better. Fang Yuan smiled and said, "Land Spirit, rest assured, how good is our relationship? I can definitely keep a secret for you. We will not expose any information regarding the blessed land. You just need to summon them directly into Heavenly Giant Solar, and let them fight. Afterwards, give them appropriate remuneration." Langya Land Spirit did not want to agree, but Qin Baisheng and the others were attacking more fiercely. Even though they used Heavenly Giant Solar, they were still losing slowly. Langya Land Spirit had no choice, he could only accept Fang Yuan's suggestion. This way, Fang Yuan brought He Lulan and Fairy Li Shan into Heavenly Giant Solar and caused this ancient battle formation's power to rise. However, He Qing controlled the immortal Gu House Dark Prison. He could resist Heavenly Giant Solar. Qin Baisheng's five-finger fist heart sword was extraordinarily sharp. It caused great harm to Heavenly Giant Solar. The situation was only suppressed for a moment before it turned bad again. Langya Land Spirit was forced to move the Hairy Man Gu Immortals in Refinement Cauldron into Heavenly Giant Solar in batches. In the intense battle, Langya Land Spirit's other self was finally summoned. After sending 3 batches, Qin Baisheng finally got a chance and had the traitors take action, starting to take away Refinement Cauldron. Eventually, he obtained many core immortal Gu from Refinement Cauldron and hurriedly retreated, bringing Xue Songzi as well as the 2 exposed Hairy Man Gu immortal traitors. After the battle, Fang Yuan handed fixed immortal travel to Tai Bai Yunsheng, asking him to bring He Lulan and Fairy Li Shan away, without staying. This way, he completed a part of the new alliance agreement that they had made earlier. He had provided a chance for He Lulan to kill He Qing. But she did not grasp the opportunity. This did not mean that Fang Yuan failed on his side of the agreement. After the battle, He Lulan and Fairy Li Shan were very curious and suspicious towards this Langya blessed land. But Fang Yuan did not answer them. The alliance agreement did not state that all information had to be shared openly. Since Fang Yuan knew everything now, why would he create problems for himself? He Lulan and Fairy Li Shan felt that Fang Yuan was shrouded in mystery and had a deep background. He could actually be related to such an incredible existence. They could not help but think, was this related to Fang Yuan's master Purple Mountain True Monarch? First, he borrowed Attitude Gu, then now, using Langya blessed land, he dealt several blows towards the confidence of He Lulan's side. This made Fang Yuan very confident in dealing with Blazing Heaven Demoness. At the same time, he was slightly setting up for the future, where he might cooperate with He Lulan and the others to capture Langya blessed land. If possible, Fang Yuan wanted to have sole possession over Langya blessed land. But many times, ideas were beautiful, while reality was cruel. This was minor preparation for the future in case Fang Yuan needed it. Langya Land Spirit turned into his second personality. Like in the previous life, he immediately decided to relocate Langya blessed land after the battle. At the same time, he changed the social system in the blessed land and created Langya sect, inviting Fang Yuan to be an external supreme elder. Fang Yuan agreed. Speaking about the remuneration of joining this battle, Fang Yuan did not ask for the rank 6 immortal Gu recipe of all-out effort Gu. Instead he sought a request for reinforcements from Langya Land Spirit. In the future, if Fang Yuan got into a dangerous situation, Langya sect would need to dispatch Gu immortals to save him. This way, Fang Yuan roped all of the Langya blessed land Hairy Man Gu immortals onto his side. Langya Land Spirit handed Fang Yuan a sect mission, asking him to go deep into the icy plain and contact the super tribes that the rockmen and snowmen who were deep underground had created. As long as you complete this mission, I will release some immortal Gu recipes to you. As long as you have enough sect contributions, you can use the points to exchange for the immortal Gu recipes that you want. Langya Land Spirit tempted Fang Yuan. Fang Yuan's thoughts shifted. Can I take a look at these immortal Gu recipes first? Of course. After seeing them, even with Fang Yuan's broad knowledge and experiences, he was tempted. Langya blessed land had dozens of immortal Gu, but the quantity of immortal Gu recipes was something even Fang Yuan couldn't expect. At the very least, Langya Land Spirit gave Fang Yuan more than 200 recipes to view. Fang Yuan quickly saw some immortal Gu recipes that suited him. He asked, "Can I choose other missions?" But Langya Land Spirit rejected him. "My Langya sect has just been established, there are many things waiting to be done, of course many missions are available. But this mission is the most dangerous, thus it is given to you. If you die, so be it, I will not feel any heartache. The hairy man Gu immortals cannot die so easily, they are one of our true members." Langya Land Spirit only spoke the truth. Fang Yuan did not know whether to laugh or cry, but he felt at ease internally. "But don't you worry, I aim to create an era of hairy men, the assistance of you and other species are needed. I have a transformation path method to turn your human body into a hairy man. When you become a true hairy man, I will open up the immortal Gu storage and allow you to exchange for immortal Gu or borrow immortal Gu using contribution points." Ha ha ha. Langya Land Spirit patted Fang Yuan's shoulder, encouraging him. This encouragement was extremely straightforward. But Fang Yuan did not care. The first question he had considered was whether he could use familiar face to turn into a hairy man and deceive Langya Land Spirit. But soon, he gave up on that idea. Not only was the familiar face that he had now an incomplete copy, the original familiar face came from Langya Land Spirit himself. Even though he was straightforward, he was not stupid. As for turning into a real hairy man, I will not consider it. Humans are the true masters of this world. It has been like this since the remote antiquity era. This is the direction the world is going, how can it be easily turned around? Back then, even long-hair ancestor had to hide and conceal his own identity. Right now, he is only a land spirit, what can he accomplish? Simply wishful thinking. Fang Yuan did not think well of Langya sect's prospects. In the 500 years of his previous life, Langya sect was taken down by heavenly court, this was the eventual outcome of Langya blessed land. Even if the future changes, and it is not heavenly court, it could also be other Gu immortal forces. Humans were the rulers, the status of variant humans would not change. Fang Yuan's plan, from start to finish, was to extract benefits from Langya Land Spirit. Langya Land Spirit turning into his second personality carried greater benefits for Fang Yuan than losses. At least right now, for Fang Yuan, there were greater gains. The original Langya Land Spirit was conservative, he would not create Langya sect, or invite Fang Yuan to be an external supreme elder, he would also not agree to assist Fang Yuan when he was in danger. After the battle to defend Langya blessed land ended, the 100 days battle in Luopa Valley commenced gradually. Fang Yuan returned to Hu immortal blessed land, resting as he created a large number of dream path mortal Gu. At the same time, he amassed a huge amount of Gu refinement immortal materials, to make preparations for refining immortal Gu. A month later, he collected all of the spring dream fruits, refining a large number of dream path mortal Gu, the number was higher than in his previous life. 2 months later, Tai Bai Yunsheng had settled the relationships on the other side as Fang Yuan used the earth tide as an opportunity to enter Eastern Sea. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know in the report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible.